A Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, the live video streaming, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. It's on the air. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show, and you out there on a Tuesday. What's today? June 29th. We're still in the month of June, but it feels like this summer is cruising along. What's going on, everybody? So, if you watched the Phillies game last night, you were probably trying your hardest, as I did, to find the good to talk about. I jotted down a couple of things that I could tell Rhys Hoskins that stood out in the game last night. And I did do that. I tweeted out the good from that game last night. So, Rhys, don't worry. I took your advice, and I tweeted out the good that happened in the game last night. Would you like to hear it? Because here it goes. In the game last night, the Phillies, these are the good things that I picked out that happened in that game last night. All right? Number one, Rhys Hoskins and Alec Boehm combined for no errors. A positive. Nick Maton came on in relief last night. One batter, one strikeout. All right? That's a positive. Maybe they found themselves a closer. I mean, could Nick Maton be the silver lining in this season that they found? Look, they didn't know anything about Nick Maton when they brought him up. Maybe they didn't even know that he was a pitcher. That's a positive from the game last night. What else did I deem to be good, the good stuff to tweet about? Alec Boehm stole a base last night. That's rare. Just fourth. A little speed. I also got Spencer Howard 2 scoreless inning. Maybe there's a better role for him on this team. Maybe he's not a starting pitcher, but maybe those 2 scoreless innings again could trigger off somebody on this team to tell them, maybe we can use him in a different manner. I don't know. That's something good that I took from the game last night. And Bailey Falter had 6 strikeouts in 4 innings last night. That was good. That was positive. Anything I missed last night? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Was there anything that I missed last night positive in the game last night? Well, Dave on Twitter says no one got caught with sticky stuff. There's a positive that I missed because they checked Nick Maton last night, the shortstop, the second baseman. Yeah, they checked the utility infielder last night to see if he was using an illegal substance on the mound. Whoa. Obviously, that game last night was pretty pathetic. And the guy who said, don't forget to write the good stuff about us, went 0 for 5 and struck out 3 times. I don't know that there's a way that Rhys Hoskins will ever be able to live those comments down, because I certainly won't forget them. He went 0 for 5. He struck out 3 times. He's 8 for 78 over his last 19 games. 8 for 78 over your last 19 games. And you come out and say, don't forget the good things. You're hitting 102 in the last 19 games. I guess the good of that would be over those 19 games going 8 for 78, he does have 4 home runs. You see, that game last night was a complete microcosm of everything that is wrong with this organization right now. And look, I don't want to have to come on here and blast the Phillies. I like the Phillies. I like the organization. I like people that work up there. I like people that play for the team. I don't know them all that much, but it seems like a likable crew. They don't get in trouble off the field all that often. This is a team that, for the most part, you don't see in the police blotter, save for Odubel Herrera and that whole mess. It's a group of guys that you want to like. But they have suddenly become the most unlikable team pretty quickly. And I look at this roster, and we've documented it plenty of times. Nothing you can do with this team. And it goes back to the hiring of Dave Dombrowski. And Dombrowski with his organization over the years is they have just missed and missed and missed and missed and missed. Them out is Aaron Nola. That's it. If you want to include Rhys Hoskins, fine. He's helped them out over the last couple of years. But to me, he's nothing more than just an average guy. Beyond the inability to draft, it speaks volumes of where this team is because they now have a general manager in Dave Dombrowski whose strength is not rebuilding an organization from the ashes and building them back up. He's the guy that comes into a team that's already put together, tying all those pieces together and getting that last addition to put them over the top. Now you have a general manager who essentially was pigeonholed and wedged into a team that essentially has no identity. They are stuck in no man's land. An aging roster with high-priced talent who can't live up to what they're being paid, and nobody else wants them. That's the Philadelphia Phillies for you. We hear it every single night. Girardi's terrible. Girardi's fault. Girardi's this. Is he a great in-game manager right now? I don't think so. But do you really think Girardi has a lot of options here? We all thought Gabe Kapler was the biggest problem this team had. He's winning fine. He seemingly has a good formula with the San Francisco Giants. And by the way, with not a whole heck of a lot of talent. You could bring in any manager you want to manage this team. The pieces that this team has been given are inadequate, and nobody's winning with this crew. When you are summoning, is that a word? When you have to summons Neftali Perez, into a high leverage situation, a man who hasn't pitched in the big leagues in over 1,000 days. That tells you the heart of your problems. Nobody is winning with this bullpen. And nobody's winning with this defense. Every single time you have a lead, the defense pops its ugly head up. Every time you have a lead, the bullpen finds a way to throw it away. I've never seen this happen before. They have blown 7 saves in 6 days. And this is the second year in a row that their bullpen has been absolutely inept. They are already on pace this year to blow more saves than they did last year. And I get it was in a 60-game season. But they're on pace to go past that number tenfold. And you go around and you look, what happened to guys that used to be in this organization? Nick Pivetta, Cole Irvin, they all seem to be blossoming in other places. So this starts at the core, and it's rotted its way all the way up to the big league diamond. The difference in the organizations in baseball right now, the Phillies are a team that's flying by the seat of their pants, hoping that they just ass backwards themselves back to 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. They hope they can find the formula in which they somehow stepped in the proverbial poo. Because in the history of this franchise, in my lifetime, they have been the laughingstock. they have been the joke. Those 4 or 5 years are the exceptions. They're not the rule. And you see why. Because they have inept management, they have inept front office, they have inept minor leagues, and it is now spilling out to ineptitude on the field. I don't pretend to sit here and tell you I know how to fix this thing. You know why? Because this is one of the most unfixable messes. This is like handing someone a Rubik's Cube and saying, go ahead, buddy, try to fix this thing. Try to see if you can figure out the Rubik's Cube, because I know in my life, I've never got that stupid cube to have all the same colors all on one side. That's the Phillies roster right now. How do I get the colors to mix? You can't. You can't. You have absolutely destroyed the minor league system. You have absolutely destroyed the ability for this team to make moves. This is a game last night, by the way. Now, you look at the final score. You might not have watched the game. Fine. You didn't watch the game. I don't blame you. But if you did check into that game somewhere in the middle innings, okay? Hey, the Phillies are playing tonight. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, the Reds are up 2-0. No surprise. Spencer Howard can't go more than 2 innings. For some reason, the Philadelphia Phillies continue, and I'm not suggesting that he can't be a starter somewhere down the line. I'm saying for this year, it's obvious that you're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. So for this year, why not utilize him in another capacity? Your bullpen is a disaster. He has shown to be effective in 2 innings of work at a time. So why don't we go that direction? Nah, let's keep getting 2 or 3 innings out of this guy. Sounds really smart. You turn the game on, it's 2-0 Reds in the third. Oh, the Phillies tie it up. It's 2-2 in the fourth. They took the lead. It's 4-2 in the fifth. And then enter the Phillies bullpen. Now, if you missed the first 6 innings of the game, you would say, same old Phillies. Except for this game was 4-2 Philadelphia in the 7th with a chance to win that game when they turned things over to the bullpen. Well, I say they turned it over to the bullpen. They took Howard out with 1 out in the third and went to Bailey Falter, who pitched 4 brilliant innings yesterday. And then at that point, it was, okay, let's see if Neftali Feliz, who hasn't thrown a pitch in Major League Baseball in over 1,000 days, can save this game for us. Yeah, didn't go so well. His ERA stands at 40.50. All right, Feliz, no good. Let's go to Enos de los Santos and see if he can help us out tonight. That didn't go so well either. 6 runs in the 8th. It's now a 12-4 game. Nick Maton had to come in the 8th to finish the game out. 1 batter, 1 strikeout. He threw 4 pitches. 3 of them were for strikes. Rhys Hoskins wants us to write or find the good. That is nearly impossible. It's hard to say that a team essentially has nothing good about it. Odubel Herrera had 2 hits. Should I write a 1,500-word dissertation on Herrera and his 2 hits? Would you like an elongated story on Alec Boehm having 2 hits and 2 RBI and a stolen base? Should I tell you once again how cute of a story Luke Williams has turned into with another hit last night? He's hitting .302. Torreyes at short got another hit and knocked in a pair of runs. The one guy that no one ever heard of before the season had 2 of your 4 RBI last night. Is that the story that Rhys Hoskins wants to hear more about? Good news typically doesn't sell. The bad stuff is what gets people riled up. We all think we know more. We know more. In this instance, it might actually be true. I'm not even questioning now whether or not people that are fans of the Phillies do know more at this point. That's how embarrassingly bad they've been. And at this point, while I don't hope for an awful season, I don't hope for a year that is a waste. I've come to expect it. And at this point, I almost advocate it. Because, unfortunately, they reap what they sow. This offseason was a disaster. They had no plan. They almost got guilted into making the moves that they made. Nobody else wanted JT Realmuto at that price, so the Phillies almost felt like, well, if nobody else is going to take him, I guess we'll take him back. And this isn't, hey, JT, you stink. This is more, the Phillies had no plan. And when you go into the offseason with no plan and you try to fly by the seat of your pants, this is the result you get. The Phillies started to put this roster idea together a month before the season started. It is painful to try to watch this team. And I know Girardi has not done a good job. I'm not sitting here suggesting that he has. But every button he pushes, it's David Hale, it's Neftali Feliz, it's Enos de los Santos. Really, what do you want him to do? I thought whoever was on the other day, I think it was Bob Wankel who brought up the part of, look, he has to be so precise, right? He has to be so precise in every single managerial decision he makes. He has to almost be perfect. And you can't be perfect in that role because your decisions are based on the output of others. You might say that was the right move at that time, and that guy might fail, making it not look like the right move at that time. So while Girardi has pushed a lot of wrong buttons, the buttons he have essentially don't work. So changing the manager isn't going to do much more than same thing we've done to all the other teams. Blame the manager, blame the coach. It's always their fault. Not Joe Girardi's fault. This is the Philadelphia Phillies organization. This is the Philadelphia Phillies organization who had no plan and dropped this into the lap of Dave Dombrowski. Hey, Dave, we hired an inept general manager in Matt Klentak. He was in over his head, and now we need you to fix it. The problem is this isn't a mess for someone of Dombrowski's ability. This is a mess for someone who's way more advanced in the game of analytics and sabermetrics and yada, yada than Dombrowski. Because Dombrowski doesn't want to sit here and strip this thing back down to its bare bones. The guy's won World Series. He's way past that portion. So now you have a relationship. This is like, a 60-year-old man trying to get into a relationship with a 30-year-old woman. It might look good on the surface. Hey, look what I got, a 30-year-old woman. This is beautiful. This is great. And then you realize, don't have a lot in common here. This probably is not going to work. And Dombrowski, this isn't suggesting he's inept. The guy's built World Series winners, but he doesn't build them from the ground up. And that's what this Phillies team needs. They need a ground-up fix. And it's not coming with Dave Dombrowski. I can tell you that much right now. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm just getting cranked up here. On the other side, I'll read off your texts. I got some calls, 609-403-0973 on the text board, 609-403-0973. Send me a text. How frustrated are you with the Phillies? More so like this. What frustrates you the most about this Phillies organization? Players, manager, front office, specific player? What is it that really frustrates you the most? Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online at mattblattnissan.com. Coming up, Frank Close answers your Phillies mailbag questions at 2:40. Michael Kasky-Blomain on the NBA playoffs. I want to ask him, did the Sixers bring in the wrong Clippers coach? Also, Mitch Lawrence tonight at 5 here on the Sports Bash. PT has the day off today. And the Sixers have lost their legendary voice. I'll explain coming up. Yeah, 2:26 on a Tuesday. It feels like it should be Friday, like happy hour Friday, but unfortunately it's only Tuesday, and the news with the Sixers got worse today. I couldn't believe when I saw that longtime voice of the Philadelphia 76ers, Mark Zumoff, is turning the microphone off. He has decided that this has been his last season, and he is retiring from the Philadelphia 76ers. I was absolutely stunned and shocked. I mean, Zoo seems to be at the top of his game still. You never are at a moment of listening to Mark Zumoff where you're like, he's really slipping here, man. I know Marv Alpert's considered to be the greatest, and you listen to him some nights and you're saying, I can see Marv is slowing down. Maybe it's time for him to kind of pass the torch to somebody else. Never did I say that about Mark Zumoff. Mark Zumoff has been really the only voice that I have ever known to call Philadelphia 76ers games. He started with the then Prism Network as the halftime host, and then for the last 27 years has been the play-by-play voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. The catchphrases have turned into podcasts. The catchphrases have turned into T-shirts. But more importantly, his catchphrases have turned into the vernacular of the Philadelphia fan, the Sixer fan out there. When you watch a Sixers game or when someone talks about the Sixers, you'll hear them many times. Turning garbage into gold, locking all windows and doors, in no particular hurry, as they rise at the Wells Fargo Center. Hang on, Allah, we're coming in for a landing. His famous yes. After countless moments, too many to list, the only play-by-play voice a generation of Sixers fans has ever known will no longer describe the Sixers' action. Now, the team says they plan to properly honor and celebrate Zumoff at a home game next season, following his retirement announcement today. That's Mark Zumoff. That's the Mark Zumoff that I know. I have had many of conversations with Mark. He has texted me. We've talked on the phone. I've met him in person. Just a genuine human being. And to me, it comes as a surprise, but no surprise, that Mark Zumoff didn't want some elaborate send-off, rocking chairs and microphones and headsets to honor the amazing work that he's done, but rather almost inconspicuously at the end of the year say, I'm out of here. I am coming in for a landing. The 76ers will need a new voice. For 39 years, we've all heard Mark Zumoff. He's been in our living room. Since 1982, he has been the most familiar voice in the Philadelphia market. He became the play-by-play announcer on August 17th, 1994. And today he announced that is the end. The 2020-2021 season was his last. No elaborate send-offs, no one more time around the league. While he's worked with many partners, he is the constant. He is Philadelphia 76ers basketball. He resonated with Sixers fans because he was, in fact, a Sixer fan. He grew up in Northeast Philly, went to George Washington High. He was a Temple University grad. He even vacations down the shore in Margate. He could be listening right now. And if he is, I would like to tell Zoo, I appreciate all the work that you've done, all the action that you've called, and all the nights that you've been in my living room. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to listen in a town that is filled with great voices. Zumoff felt like your friend. He felt like the guy who was just absolutely there because he wanted to watch the game with you wherever you were watching it, not describe it for you. And that doesn't minimize the job that he did. I thought the job that he did was incredible. but he always felt just like your friend. And I'm going to miss Zumhofe calling the action on television. And I'm going to miss Zumhofe sending me a random text here or there. And I'm going to miss having Zumhofe just give me a call and ask me a few questions. And, hey, Mike, I'm in Margate, and I wanted to ask you this. There's a lot of people in this industry who are in it with ego and for the wrong reasons. Mark Zumhofe is the furthest from one of those guys. He was a class act through and through. And I certainly, as I said, was surprised, but I'm not surprised at how he decided to do it, if that makes sense. Could Mark continue to go? Absolutely. Absolutely. In a statement from the team, he said he wanted to spend some more time with his wife and his family, and he wanted to learn foreign languages and travel and do all the stuff that we all take for granted. You know, being in this industry, sometimes people don't understand the odd hours, and it seems glorious sometimes on the surface. Yeah, going to games is cool. Traveling here and there, it could be fun. But at some points, it becomes tiresome, repetitive. But there is that part of it that is unique. But the other part of it is, as he described, you know, you're away on the weekends, you're away on holidays. And if you truly love your family, that's hard sometimes. You know, I cut back on going to games. When I was younger, I went to games all the time. Feel like going to the Phillies game tonight, jump in my car. Feel like going to the Sixers game tonight, jump in the car. So you admire people who can make that work, and that shows you what kind of person and man that Mark Zumhofe is. So I wish him the best, and I certainly will miss his calls, his energy, and I have no idea what will be next for that broadcast. It will be a tough act to follow for anybody who takes that job. But in the pantheon in Philadelphia sports, it feels like, oddly enough, I'm 44. I grew up with Harry Kalas on the Phillies, with Mark Zumhofe on the Sixers. Obviously, Merrill Reese is the only voice that almost every one of us has ever heard on the Eagles. And I was a little young for Gene Hart. I'm more in the Jim Jackson era of Flyers hockey. But for Zumhofe, you know, once Harry passed, and now Tom's been doing this for quite some time now, it almost feels normal that Tom McCarthy is the voice of the Philadelphia Phillies. And, of course, Merrill, who's on the radio, so he's not that television presence. He's not in your living room every night. Mark Zumhofe's in your living room every night. And that I'll miss. Because Mark felt like he says he would come through the television and almost say, hey, Mike, can I sit on the couch next to you and describe this game? You know, people have told me they've seen Zumhofe call high school football games and that he's just as prepared for those as he is a Philadelphia 76ers game. Not surprising at all. That's the kind of stuff that I appreciate. You know, I do a lot of play-by-play, and quite frankly, I love it. I love doing play-by-play. It's what I always wanted to do. Doing the sports talk show was not what I wanted to do. Play-by-play jobs are few and far between. They're hard to get, and oh, by the way, they don't pay very well. You do it because you love it. Now, I'm not suggesting that Mark didn't get paid well. I'm sure he did quite well at that level. On the way up there, it's not easy. And the preparation that goes into doing a game is incredible work. You know, you're calling a basketball game or a football game or a baseball game, the amount of time that you need to fill and the backstories you need to get and all that stuff. It is amazing the amount of tidbits and things that he could add to a broadcast. And just having a small dose of doing that job on a much smaller level, the appreciation for what he did is pretty cool. So, congratulations, Mark. I hope you enjoy your time off. I did send him a text today. I hopefully he got that, and we can chat some time down the line. I do know that he was just recently on the locker room with Billy Schweim. I think either last weekend or the weekend before that. I guess it would be the final interview he's ever done as the voice of the Philadelphia 76ers on radio. Pretty cool. And I heard that interview, and he told a lot of these stories. I'm just a kid from the Northeast who was a fan of the team, who always, my dream was to be the voice of the 76ers. A lot of us have had that dream, Mark. You got to live it, so mazel tov to you, my friend. Mark Zumoff, one of the best. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Frank Close answers your Phillies mailbag questions next. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Frank Close covers the Phillies. That's a dubious task right now. He joins us now for a look at the good. We don't want to talk about the bad. Just point out the good, Frank. I pointed out some good last night, I thought. I found a couple things. See if you concur. Maybe you picked up some ones that I didn't get, but I got Bohm and Hoskins did not make an error. That's a rarity. I got Bohm stole the base. You don't see that too often. I got Nick Maton, one batter, one strikeout.
And he passed the test for not having any substances on his fingers, right?
That too. And I got Bailey Falter, 6 strikeouts in 4 innings. Did I miss anything?
I think that sums it up pretty well. I guess Neftali Feliz hit 98.
Neftali Feliz hit 98. Great.
I'll tell you, last night after that was over, it was like, oh, shoot, I got to talk about this on the radio tomorrow.
I mean, like, you go back to that, though. I don't think Hoskins could ever live those comments down. Do you? I mean, do you look at him and say, well, I get what he was saying, but I mean, I don't know how this franchise can go forward with him as one of the leaders of the team after saying that.
Yeah, that is not a good look. And really, for the most part, that interview went kind of well, I thought, with Hoskins. Other than that, but I will say this: Jim Salisbury made a good point about it. He said that he was willing to face the reporters even after that error, whereas he could have just, especially now when everything's on Zoom, he could have just said, "Nah, not today." But I guess he kind of lived up to the music at the very least.
I guess so, but I get it. He came out and he said it, that he came out to talk, but the preface it by saying, "Hey, look, I know you're going to write about the error, but we did a lot of good things too." I mean, that to me, I'm not knocking him so much as it just shows the mentality of him and the team, and that's just a mentality that if I'm the front office, I don't want. I'm not saying he's bad. I'm not saying that he was wrong. I'm just saying if that's your mentality, I think that's the mentality that shows where this organization. I think it's a microcosm of who this organization is.
Yeah, I think you need to hear from him that we lost the game. There's no good, period. Right? And I wrote about this yesterday. They have no real winners on this team.
One of the things you brought up in the article was great about Dombrowski bringing in Dalton and the fact that this team doesn't like what happened to McCutchen being quite a leader. I mean, other than him, they don't really have a guy on this team. I mean, nothing.
Here's the thing: McCutchen has never won a playoff series. So yeah, he's got this pedigree. Yeah, he's got an MVP background, but he still is not a winner. Like if you look at wins and loss, like whether or not someone's a winner based on whether or not they made the World Series and won the World Series, he hasn't even won a playoff series. And if you go up and down the roster, very, very few playoff appearances among them, including the big names that they brought in, like JT Realmuto and Bryce Harper. So you gotta. And here's the thing: this will come up in the mailbag too. But Dave Dombrowski a few years ago went out and got Steve Pearce as sort of that difference maker on that Red Sox team. He's got to do something to kind of shake this up and bring somebody in with a new attitude, because right now they're just trudging along.
There's no question about it. And the first question that you got in the mailbag is, you're the GM. What would you do with this roster? I mean, I don't know where you even start. This is an unfixable, in my opinion, this roster is almost unfixable until some of these contracts expire.
Right. And I think that is the reality. And I think that's the reality that Dave Dombrowski is operating in. I think the best thing he could have done for this team is not gone crazy this past offseason. He shouldn't trade any prospects, and he shouldn't sign anybody to deals that cost draft picks. And so then what do? Well, you sign Matt Moore, you sign Chase Anderson, you try to make a few pieces hoping that they work out, the things that don't cost you a lot. And then you find a way to sort of navigate through this season and try to be relevant while you let the prospects rise through the system, and you let Andrew McCutchen become a free agent. You let Odubel Herrera become a free agent. And then you start to see that you have some flexibility on your roster to do some things. So I think right now, Dave Dombrowski is doing what you might expect. And he has been spotted throughout the Phillies minor league system in recent weeks. He's been going around the local affiliates, seeing what he has. And really, for somebody that got hired in December, now I think a lot of people don't realize this, but you enter that offseason and you figure out your organizational approach for the offseason right afterwards. And the Phillies fired Matt Klentak, or he stepped down, or whatever you want to call it, and they had a set of path forward, and then he comes in like 2+ months later, right? So in a way, he's got to sit around and evaluate what he has. And I know that that's just maddening for the fan base, that you kind of have to kind of wade through whatever you have this season. You might add a couple pieces that do no harm. Like I just said, you're not trading any prospects. You don't even have room to take on anybody's money, but you might want to try to find something to mix this up just a little bit. Again, with 2/3 of your infield kind of graduating out into free agency, Alec Boehm moving somewhere else, probably. Like, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces here, and so he's got to make sure that he is ready for this next upcoming offseason to really put his mark on this team. But yeah, a lot of it is just muddling through a lot of this.
It feels like this season is a wasted year, right? It's just you got veterans holding on to spots. You don't really have guys that are ready. Could you say, you know what? We're not a playoff team. I want to see Bryson Stott play. We're not a playoff team. I don't even know if they have anybody else that's ready.
No, and in fact, you look at AAA, their best hitting player is Ruben Tejada, who's like 100, and he's batting 244. So they have even nobody at AAA that's ready to sort of graduate up. And Adam Haseley injured. Cornelius Randolph, which opened some eyes for a little bit, injured. Mickey Moniak floundering. Scott Kingery floundering. So I think that the Phillies really just have no option but to keep an eye on the waiver claims that they could possibly make. See if they could bring in a veteran from somewhere else, from a team that's out of it, that's just willing to. I see the type of trade that he could make this season is maybe to trade a Moniak or a Haseley for one of these veteran types, and you're just kind of giving up on Moniak and Haseley if you do that. But he doesn't have much to trade right now. And so.
Well, let me ask you this then. I mean, we know, I'm not saying this is Dombrowski's fault. I think the previous general manager was in way over his head, and this is the mess that he created. But Dombrowski, who has won World Series, he has been a successful guy. But is this the right type of build for him?
I think so, because he took over that Detroit Tigers team and he made them a winner, not immediately, but soon thereafter. So, you got to trust in his pedigree to do the right thing and kind of get this in shape. And really, I just can't see him doing much because he has no room to move, right? So the payroll's maxed out, and the prospects are all AA or lower. So there's nothing to trade. So what you have is what you have. You hope that the team, this team is not going to fall below 500 too much. Why? Because you saw it in the Mets series, right? One earned run out of your 4 starts against the Mets, 23 1/3 innings. That makes you a 500 team by default. Even if you mess everything else up like the Phillies did, they still won 2 of 4. So this team is not going to be a team that's going to win 1/3 of their games and get a high draft pick. That's just not going to happen. So he's kind of in a tough situation here where there's really not much to move. There's not much in terms of prospects to improve. He's just kind of got to wait this out. And then most of the Phillies prospects and talent is at Class A right now up in Jersey Shore, and they need to graduate up.
All right, Frank, some more questions. Lindsay wants to know, how do you feel about trading Hoskins and playing Alec Boehm at first base? Is that something this organization needs to consider?
Everything is on the table, I think, this offseason. The defense, you can't live with this defense. I think when Andrew McCutchen, you realize he still had 2 years left when Alec Boehm was sort of graduating up to the major leagues. And I think the Phillies kind of figured, okay, well, if you can get through a couple years at third base, then left field might be open for Alec Boehm. I think that's still a possibility that he ends up in the outfield, not just first base. So I think what will happen is they will look this offseason at like you were saying yesterday, you don't know if there's a DH or not next year, right? So you can't bank on it, right? So, there's so much that could happen this offseason and so many moves that you could possibly make. Among the possibilities is Bowman left. Maybe Bryson Stott comes up. You move one of Gregorius or Segura to third base. Maybe. Again, all these maybes. Maybe one of those 2 players is made available and is traded this offseason, for the last year of their contracts. And maybe there's a DH. So maybe Hoskins gets plugged in at DH, and maybe Boehm is in left field, and then you find a way to have a competent first baseman and third baseman. So there are so many options, including a very strong shortstop free agent class that's often talked about. I don't know if the Phillies are going to go to any of those 10-year deals that like the Lindor type contracts that the likes of Trevor Story will get, or maybe Javi Baez gets too many years. But there could be some good names left over after those really big names kind of come off the board, and you could add somebody that could factor into the whole equation. But I think defense has got to be a priority for this Phillies team. Everything should be on the table for them to make changes this offseason. And I think that Dombrowski, at least coming in from the outside, he's got sort of this unbiased view. He's not attached to these players like anybody that might have developed them along the way. And I think anything is game this offseason.
Bailey Falter had a good outing. Someone asked you about him. Who is he? What's his long-term thought? What is he? A starter, a reliever, a journeyman? What do you got on Falter?
So I think for this year, he is going to remain in the bullpen, at least for now. I think he's on the short list to if they need somebody else. One thing that's kind of not really been made a lot of so far is that Spencer Howard's already lost his spot in the rotation. Matt Moore is starting this weekend. So after Matt Moore had that great start as sort of the sixth starter in that doubleheader, Matt Moore is going to start again. So I don't think Spencer Howard takes his next turn because Matt Moore is. And beyond that, I think that you need
to move Howard to the bullpen.
I don't know what they do. Do you send him to AAA? I don't think they know what to do. Now, if they could mold him into a good reliever, then you don't need to get Neftali Feliz into a game like that 4 years out of Major League Baseball. So maybe we keep hearing this a lot, right? He can come out and give you 2 good innings and then he falls apart, right? So does he profile as a reliever? Are they going to let him do that? Or are they going to commit to him as somebody that's going to be at the back end of the bullpen? Who knows? That all said, I think in terms of Falter, they're going to kind of keep him around. He could be somebody to piggyback Velasquez, or at least make the Velasquez starts a little bit longer. And he's given them a lot. He was a starter at AAA. They moved him to the bullpen so that he could be more prepared for that kind of role. I didn't think. Now here's the thing about yesterday. A lot of people are saying, do you leave Falter in? I think that the Phillies intentionally made him not stretched out, as they say, to be a starter so that he could fulfill this bullpen role. And I think they might have thought he wasn't stretched out enough to go further. And of course, if the game collapsed under Falter, everybody would be saying, why'd you leave Falter in? But very, very nice piece. I see him now sort of as the long man left in the bullpen. I mean, David Hale's gone. Matt Moore's in the rotation. Chase Anderson is still missing. So I think that role is his for right now.
There you go. Pull Phillies questions. I know you got bombarded with questions.
I sure did.
The Phillies, obviously, people are angry. When things are bad, people want answers. They go to Frank's mailbag for those answers. You can read the full mailbag over at 973ESPN.com at Frank Close if you want to get a question in for next week's Phillies mailbag. All right, Frank, take care, man.
Talk to you soon, Mike.
Yes, indeed. He is Frank Close. He covers the Phillies and does a great job. Long time. He's been on that Phillies beat for us at 97.3ESPN.com at Frank Close. And, of course, the Phillies are starting a 3-game set tonight with the Marlins, who, of course, they have struggled with. It's Velasquez, Nola, and Eflin in this series. Wheeler will go in the first game against the Padres. And as you heard Frank said there, he thinks Moore will go on Saturday, not Howard, who is scheduled to go. Moore would be in that spot. So it would be Velasquez, Nola, Eflin, Wheeler, and Moore. We'll see what happens with Spencer Howard. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, Hour 1 in the books. Jeff Nadeau will tell us how to bet some of these NBA basketball playoff games. And if you're watching the Euro 2020, Jeff has been on fire giving out winners for that. So we'll get him to explain how to bet soccer games as we are down to 16 in the Euro 2020. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And coming up later on in the show, my conversation with Mark Zumhoff about his path to the Sixers play-by-play chair. You don't want to miss it.
Ash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Sports Best Live, hour 2 here on a Tuesday. So much to get into. All these Euro games have been going on. We'll give you some insight on how to bet the games, the NBA playoffs, and obviously I got some NFL stuff that I want to dive into as well. The man, the myth, the legendary Jeff Nadeau. It's right there on your screen. Looking good, man. What's going on a Tuesday? I'm sure I know that you are probably getting ready for what? Sweden and who's that? Ukraine?
Yeah, I'll get it on my TV here in just a second. We've seen some great football the last couple of days. So, yeah, very excited about the continued Euro Cup. I'm very excited for Friday. I've been a fan of Italy for a lot of years. That's what got me into soccer many years ago. I've got a big future on them. So I'll be watching the game live at a pizzeria I grew up going to. My best friend owned a pizzeria. His father got me into soccer. So I'm very excited about Friday's match.
Is there nothing better than hanging out all day in a pizzeria watching a soccer game?
No. I've said it many times. One of the great joys of my life are going to a pizzeria I know about. When I lived in South Philly, it was hanging on the corner, just talking all night, doing whatever. And, that's one of the things why I can never leave the area that I live in. You imagine going to like a pizzeria in Omaha or Pocatello. It's like, nah, I'm good. I love pizzerias, man. The Shore's got some great pizzerias as well. Great hangout spots, Margate, Ventnor, right on Ventnor Ave.
There's a place across the street from our office, and you go in there, and the guy barely speaks any English, and they always got a soccer game on, and they're all glued to it. I said, that's when you know you got a good pizzeria.
This is how you know if a pizzeria is legit or not. I'm going to tell you how. If they have Rai on, RAI, that channel, they're real ones. You know what Rai is, Mike?
Not familiar.
It's basically the equivalent of CBS here, but in Italy.
Gotcha.
And if they pay for a Rai, they're a real one.
They're it. So how these games are on all day? I know people want the action. So what are some tips on betting the Euro?
Yeah, I mean, the tip I would give you is just understand what you're betting. A lot of people don't understand that when a game is 90 minutes, that's what the bet consumes. So if you take a team to win, it has to be in 90 minutes, right? If it's 1-1 at the end, you don't get your money back. You don't have a shot in extra time to win. Your international play and tournament play is always about extra time. If they don't get – in a regular game, 90 minutes is it. The game just ends. It could be a draw, whatever. In play like this at this point in the tournament – they would advance to 90 minutes, past 90 minutes, do shootouts if they have to do it. But you won't win. If you pick Sweden to win today in 90 minutes, if it gets the extra time and they win, you lose. So my first advice would be understand soccer betting. And it's very complex, but if you can understand it, you kind of know what's going on, then you can start delving into the players and the teams.
That's good stuff. I know I know a lot of people who bet this will bet draws, right? They'll bet because of this situation where if it's 0-0 or 1-1 or 2-2, there's been a lot of scoring, by the way. Yesterday you had what? You had a lot of stuff going on.
15 goals combined in two games.
It was wild.
I will say this too, Mike. One final point on it. My advice to new soccer bettors at this point in the tournament, I would only look at to advance to the next round. That would be what I would look at. Because then it doesn't matter if it goes to a shootout. It doesn't matter if it goes to extra time. Whoever wins the game, 4 hours later is the team. If you pick that team, you're good to go. You don't got to worry about draws or anything. There's just all sorts of stuff to understand when you're betting soccer. So make sure.
All right, Jeff Nadeau. Follow him at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter, and check out what he's throwing out there. A lot of times he will throw you his soccer thoughts. So follow him at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. Let's look at the NBA games tonight. You got this one's tough because I'm imagining you think Trae Young's going to play, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So he's got the bruised foot, questionable for the game. Opened at 6, up to 7 at certain spots. So the Hawks are a 7-point dog tonight against the Bucks. So they feel like the Bucks have kind of taken control of this series.
Yeah, and I hate to say this at the beginning of the breakdown. I have had some real trouble with the Bucks. It seems like whenever I bet on them, it just goes the opposite. I do have a reason, though, and some interest in the over in this game. You look at the first 3 games in this series, or 4 games, whatever it's been. You have 1 game that went way over and 2 games that were right near the number. And in 2 of the games, the Atlanta Hawks had very big issues scoring the basketball. They score 102 and then 91, I believe, in both games. Just not good enough offensively. I feel like if we could just get a little bit better version of the Hawks tonight, maybe go up the tempo a little bit more, get a little bit more contribution from others. I think they're a team that can get into the hundreds. And I think when you look at the Bucks, they've had no trouble scoring in this series. The Bucks offense has been good, even though they haven't shot the ball real well from 3. They haven't got production out of Drew Holiday. So I think there's still a lot of things to come together that makes the over enticing in this game. Look, playoff basketball is tough when you bet totals just because generally the possessions shorten and things really get close towards the end. But I'm feeling like this is a game where the Bucks probably have control of it, and I'm just expecting the Hawks to be better offensively tonight. I feel like if they can get to 105, I think this game is going to go over the number. I think 218 just a bit low. I think this is more indicative of what maybe we saw in the first game, where this game gets into the 220s. I'm just kind of thinking that this total is just a bit too low.
You got 219.5 on BetMGM, 218.5 on FanDuel and DraftKings. So that number was 223.5. It opened at. So
yeah, I've kind of waited here. I bet it earlier today. I think I'm obviously going to get the best price here, which I'm very happy about. Now it's about winning the game, right? You want to get the value on the line, but it's all about winning. So I'm hoping for like a 110, 114, 110 type of game, something like that. And get a winner here.
All right, the other game tomorrow night. Now, this series is getting real interesting all of a sudden. Last year, they were on the other side. They were up 3-1 and blew it. Now they're down 3-1. They made it 3-2, and they're a point favorite tomorrow night. +1 on DraftKings and FanDuel, -1 on BetMGM PointsBet. So it's right in that spot. This one looks like it's going to kind of hover almost around a pick'em.
Yeah, the Clippers won. They're facing elimination. That's great. I figured they would probably do that. I still think the Suns are the better team, and I'm not going to really, game to game, getting consistency out of Paul George is not easy. I thought he's been pretty good in this series so far, but I'll continue to think that the Suns are going to be the play. I think they're the better team. I think they're going to kind of keep them at arm's length in this series, and I think the Clippers, eventually from game to game, I just don't really trust him and the other cast, whether it's Marcus Morris, Batum, Mann, whoever. I just think the overall product I'm getting from the Suns is a better team overall. I think they'll continue to kind of get Chris Paul back into the swing of things. I thought they did a nice job against Ayton last night. I don't think they'll do such a good job tomorrow, so I'll probably go back to that prop with DeAndre Ayton because he's dominated this series. But I'm not willing to believe that the Clippers could actually come back. I know they have a different coach, and that's helpful, but I think the Suns are the better team. Whenever I'm going to get the Suns near a pick, I'm going to probably be on them.
Now, you mentioned that Ayton bet. I know some of our listeners cashed in on that one last week. Yeah. That is what, the plus the rebounds and points combined?
Correct. Yeah, it's actually in the money. If you've backed it in all 5 games, I think it's 3-2. But I expect off of a loss of it not coming in. Ayton has been kind of the go-to guy here with this team in this series, so I expect to go right back to it. Yeah.
All right, I got a couple NFL thoughts I want to get your take on because I want to find the best value, okay, for the best regular season record. All right, so the best one is the Chiefs at +300. All right, you got Tampa Bay +500. You got Buffalo +900. Baltimore +1,200. Cleveland +1,200. So which team would you put some money on to win best regular season record with the best value? Because I got mine. I think mine might be Green Bay or Dallas at +2,500.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen this bet. I'm actually kind of enticed with it now that you're telling me about it. Okay, now I'm seeing it. Best regular season record.
Yep.
Well, Mike, obviously it's about getting into some of these schedules and looking at that, and obviously looking at the division and things like that. I'm I guess not in a belief that the AFC East is very good outside of the Bills.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not really. I guess the Dolphins will be better, but can they actually beat the Bills? I'm not exactly sure. The Jets suck, and I think the Patriots have a bit of a road back. I'm not really going to just anoint them as it's just one bad season and they're going to be good to go. And the Bills have early on some tough games. I mean, they've got to play the Steelers. They've got to play Washington. Do I really think either of those teams could beat the Bills? No. Going to the Chiefs is going to be tough. But outside of that, the Chiefs game is kind of the difference. I think all in all, it's a tough schedule, but you got to look outside of the box on some of these. And I think the Bills are kind of interesting. I think they're a really good football team. I think they're probably a top 4 team in the NFL. I think outside of the Chiefs, are the best team in the AFC. And I'm really and this is a continued indictment on this team in this city, that if you go out and get a big-time receiver for your quarterback, you will make that quarterback better and in turn go to high ends in the playoffs. And they did that with Stephon Diggs, and I expect an even further run this year probably. But yeah, I guess it's more probably about divisions and kind of the overall schedule. Their overall schedule is tough, but from a division standpoint, I think they could sweep this division.
Another one that for plus 4,000, I'm willing to throw some ducats down on Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, that's a high number as well. I think Tennessee's a team that's taken some major steps forward. Are you just kind of alluded? You did mention Dallas, didn't you?
I did. Dallas to me at plus 2,500 is pretty good value.
Yeah. I guess for me, like, I bet Dallas to win the Super Bowl. I think I've already discussed that with you. I can get 28-1 on that. I'm a little bit kind of more interested in that. I have to kind of delve more into these schedules. You definitely hit me with hit me with a quick right here, Mike. You got me into the spring of things. I've been very much into the NFL, and I've been looking up all sorts of things. I haven't went through every schedule, but no, that's a fascinating one. I actually last year bet some of those will a team go undefeated kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I struck out horribly. Maybe a team with the worst record I'd have some interest in.
Worst regular season record: Texans plus 175, Detroit plus 300, Jets plus 700, Cincinnati plus 1,000, Jacksonville 1,200, Philadelphia 1,200, Vegas 1,400, Carolina 1,600. I wouldn't be surprised if like the Bears at plus 2,800 fell into that spot.
I got to tell you, Mike, I have no real problem, frankly, especially on FanDuel where I can get 350. I have no problem playing chalk here. I think the Detroit Lions are the worst team in the NFL. I mean that. This roster sucks.
Yeah, plus 300. There you go.
They have no coach. They're in a division that I think is, top to bottom, one of the best divisions. I mean, people really underrate how good I think the Vikings can be. I think the Bears defense is going to take, again, a major step forward. They have a quarterback, hopefully now. Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers is always a team. So, yeah, I think Detroit is bad. I think they're like a 2 or 3 win team. I think Houston has some reason for a little excitement.
All right, I'll leave you with this. I know this Ben SImmons is getting traded everywhere. Yeah. Are any of the rumored deals, do they push your pile?
Yeah, I mean, virtually all of them do, frankly. I don't know what – I'm not really sure what we still having these conversations – not calling you out, Mike, but having these conversations that you folks aren't willing to trade. Why? I mean, what are we doing here? Why are we still waiting?
Are any of these just trading him to trade him or because the team is going to get better?
I think in most instances the team will improve if you get rid of Ben SImmons. I don't know how it wouldn't. I mean, let me ask you, Mike, do you actually think that if Kyle Lowry was on this team instead of Ben Simmons, do you think they would have beat Atlanta? Because I do.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry. I haven't seen his name mentioned though.
Well, look who's mentioned.
All right,
Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard.
Simmons those two I think are a pipe dream. Don't you?
No. Why would if you are you going to? So why do you think Damian Lillard is a pipe dream?
I don't think Portland would do it straight up. I mean, they might. Which I would be willing to do.
Well, I'll tell you, I would do. It would. I wouldn't even have to think about it. I would say yes right on the phone. I would see a Maxey, see a Thibault, see a Simmons. I'll give up a few first-round picks. See you later. I don't care about picks anymore.
I think if you were able to get Lillard, I think Morey would do it. I don't think he's going to do it for like C.J. McCollum. I don't think he's going to do it for like D'Angelo Russell. I feel like that's a net negative.
And then that's ultimately, Mike, what will happen, because I don't think in this town we have really ever any good news when basketball comes around. I think they're going to accept and say, you know what, we'll give him one more year, and they'll have the same result for one more year. This team has bottled every opportunity they've had, and they're now in a bad predicament because a lot of teams, Portland's just going to say, well, we don't really want Ben Simmons. Sorry. And then what do you do? I know people have met. I see a lot of people talking about D'Angelo Russell. I made the case back in the regular season that I would entertain the trade. You're going to get at least something out of D'Angelo Russell. I think him and Embiid would be a fun tandem. We have to look at what Ben Simmons actually is going to do, not what we think he's going to do, because he's shown in 4 years he has no ability or interest in improving what he is and who he is. I love this Olympic stuff. He's not playing Olympics because he's getting better at his game. Give me a break. He's going on vacation and he's going to hang out with some blondes on the beach.
I am not a Ben Simmons hater, but that being said, if they had that meeting and they sit down, you say, Ben, if you don't work out with us this summer, you want to go work out with your brother, sorry, we got to move you. Unless you are willing to work out here with us, I'll give you a shot. Other than that, I have to move you. I'm sorry.
Mike, I want to say one final thing on this. And this is exactly who Ben Simmons is. I want to tell you. Mac McClung, okay, last year he played at Texas Tech. High-end guy. If you know college basketball, you know Mac McClung. Played at Georgetown. Mac McClung had a wonky shot release. Went to Drew Hanlon, says, I want to fix my release. In a few short months, I saw a video yesterday of Mac McClung. His shot is wet now. I mean, it looks great. Total improvement. Why can't Ben Simmons do that? What's going on here? This is a kid in college.
Well, he wants to work out with his brother.
Well, and that's the issue.
That's the problem.
They enable him. That family enables him.
Yep.
This team enables him, and this coach enables him. That's the problem here. And until they realize that it's not going to ever change, that's what's going to happen.
You got a soccer thought for the day? Tomorrow?
I haven't even looked at the card yet. I know on Friday I'm all over Italy. Belgium's going to be without De Bruyne and Hazard, two of their best players. That is a big loss. This team is very good. I think Italy is the best team left after France was knocked out yesterday. Italy-England, I think, is the final. It's going to be a great one if we get it. Italy is going to beat Belgium on Friday.
Manja!
Forza.
See ya.
See ya, Mike.
Jeff Nadeau, everybody here with another edition. Don't forget the Hoops Betting Hour for the playoffs. You can check him out there at Jeff Nadeau. Follow him on Twitter. And on Tuesdays, we like to mix it up here on the Sports Bash. I like to just mix it up. McGarry, Jeff, Rank, PT. It's always fun just to mix it up. Just throw a bunch of different topics into the blender. All right, when we come back, Michael Caskey-Blomane on the NBA playoffs. I'll throw some Simmons deals his way, see which ones he approves of. Mitch Lawrence tonight at 5, and my conversation with Mark Zumoff. What time's that, Josh? 4:40? 5:25? We'll go for 5:25 tonight.
Live concerts. Getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. Get the latest info about COVID-19 vaccines at getvaccineanswers.org. It's up to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Tired of waking up hot and uncomfortable? Start sleeping cool on the Tempur-Breeze by Tempur-Pedic. It's engineered with a revolutionary cooling system that pulls excess heat away from your body to help you sleep deeper all night and wake up more refreshed every morning. During the Tempur-Pedic Summer of Sleep, save $500 on all Tempur-Breeze mattresses and experience your coolest sleep this summer with our best Breeze savings of the year. Learn more at TempurPedic.com.
You can watch the Sports Bash live now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 97.3 ESPN or visit our website, 973ESPN.com.
All right, MKB's in the house, the NBA playoffs, the Sixers offseason. We've got you covered here. CBS Sports NBA writer Michael Kasky-Blomain joins me on 97.3 ESPN. Michael, what's going on, my man? Michael, you got to turn your mic on, please. You're muted over there. We'll try to get Michael to get that microphone on. I don't see him currently, but I see that his mic is off. If we can maybe get, there we go. Michael, you got me?
There we go, Mike. Yeah, sorry, Mike.
There we go. MKB's in the house. What's up, my man?
What's going on?
All is good, man. I know this is we thought the Sixers could be getting ready for a Game 4 tonight. That's not happening. It's the Hawks and the Bucks. We'll get into that series in just a minute. But you wrote a little bit about this, and you tweeted this the other day, that don't listen to people that say Ben SImmons has no trade value now, or that the Sixers couldn't possibly bring him back next season. Neither of those things are true. Now that we're a week out of this thing, where do we feel? I mean, there's the reports that they met, the two sides. Where do we feel this is more likely headed? Towards a divorce or towards mediation and fixing this thing?
That's obviously the most pressing question facing the team this offseason, Mike. And to me, it could honestly go either way. I think that the two sides met and the no request was made for a trade is, a positive indicator of the fact that, the relationship between the two sides isn't irreparable. that the Sixers would, potentially feel comfortable bringing him back. The situation hasn't reached a breaking point to the point where, they feel as though they need to move on from him. But at the same time, I mean, we know Daryl Morey's track record. We know he's obviously going to do his due diligence and see what opportunities present themselves. And I think there will still be a strong market for Ben, despite his struggles in the postseason, given his age, his accolades, and his ability. So, it's going to be a situation where I think obviously the market is going to dictate what happens. But, to me, it wouldn't be shocking either way, one way or the other.
Of the trades that are kind of being floated out there, do any of them push your pile at all? Do any of them say, if that one's on the table, or if this player's on the table, you've got to make that move?
Yeah, I think to me, Mike, and I'm sure a lot of Sixers fans agree with me, would be a potential trade for Dame Lillard out of Portland. Obviously, that report dropped a couple days ago about him, potentially wanting a separation after some of the blowback from the coaching situation and the team's inability to, build a contender after a bunch of years with him as the primary guy. And to me, that's the type of trade that if you are going to part with Ben Simmons, who was, obviously the top pick in the draft just 5 years ago, runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Star, a guy that, for all intents and purposes, was meant to be a foundational piece of the Sixers for, the next decade, the foreseeable future. If you are going to move a piece like that, I think you have to get value back, to the extent of a guy like Dame Lillard. I don't think, to me, a package based around draft picks doesn't move the needle. It would have to be a situation where you have a guy like Dame, who's basically in his prime right now. He would project to complement really well with Joel on the court. An absolutely elite scorer, the type of guy that in the postseason, when things bog down in the fourth quarter, when the Sixers have had struggles year after year, he's the exact type of guy you can give the ball to on the perimeter and set a screen for, or give him, the ball in isolation and tell him to get you a bucket and he'll deliver. So to me, obviously, if that trade were to present itself, I think the Sixers would have to, capitalize and make a move there. But otherwise, there doesn't, nothing else that I've seen really moves the needle for me, yet. But obviously, we've seen in the NBA that could change pretty quickly.
Yeah, I know Minnesota seems to be interested. D'Angelo Russell's a name. Does he do anything? Does a Ben Simmons, D'Angelo Russell swap make this team better or just different?
I would say worse, in my opinion. I think that would make the Sixers, infinitely worse. I think what Ben brings to the court, D'Angelo Russell obviously has developed into a nice player on the offensive end. He's a solid scorer. But if you lose what Ben provides on the defensive end and what he provides offensively in terms of playmaking, rebounding, things like that, and you just replace it with a guy like D'Angelo Russell, who's capable of scoring, but he's not the most efficient player. He's a high volume scorer. To me, it's just a situation where that you're not getting equal value back for Ben Simmons in that situation.
CJ McCollum's the name that keeps coming up. You mentioned Dame, but what if they say, I don't want to give you Dame, we'll give you CJ McCollum? Better, different, worse?
Yeah, that's another one, Mike. I think they would be worse off. I love CJ McCollum as a player, and if the Sixers could somehow, get him onto the roster alongside Joel and Ben, that's a completely different story, because I think he would almost be the perfect type of third guy between those three players that you can, rely on for, the perimeter scoring and the shot creation. And then, Ben could pick up where he lacks defensively. But if we're talking about trading Ben Simmons, again, CJ McCollum is another guy, really nice player. But I think if you replace Ben with him on the Sixers, he just doesn't bring everything, especially on the defensive end, obviously, that Ben brings to the floor. And I think ultimately the team would end up being, worse off in a trade like that.
Yeah, I know that there's other, people keep throwing, but it seems that there are teams that are interested, right? It does seem that, the Minnesota, they want him, quote unquote, badly. There's other teams that seemingly, so it appears if the Sixers are motivated to move Ben, they could find a dance partner here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that, Mike. But I don't think it's a situation where, and this is where I think Daryl Morey's experience really comes in handy. I don't think it's a situation where the Sixers should be looking to move him just for the sake of moving him. Like there's definitely interested parties. You mentioned the Timberwolves. Obviously, there's been speculation that the Warriors might be interested. The Sacramento Kings are another team. potentially even the Thunder. There's a lot of teams that would definitely be interested. But to me, you have a unique situation in the Sixers where you have the runner-up for the MVP in Joel Embiid, basically probably coming into his prime as a player right now. And it's not a couple of years ago to me for the Sixers where they would, potentially want to make a move to get future assets or future draft picks back for Ben Simmons. Like, he's a guy that has contributed to winning in the short term for Philadelphia, albeit he's obviously had his struggles in the past postseason, but he's a big part of the reason that they've been successful. And if you're taking him off that roster, I think you really need to get players back that can help you win, in the window that's basically open because of Embiid, guys that can help you win right now. And there's not, a ton of potential suitors I see that have that type of package. So to me, it's a situation where, if the Dame trade happens, if Bradley Beal decides this offseason that he's looking for a new home, maybe you go in that direction. But otherwise, I think it's a situation where if something is great, you do it. But if not, you show patience and you can bring him back next season.
Michael Kasky-Blomain covers the NBA, the Sixers for CBS Sports. Him not playing in the Olympics, is that a positive sign or a negative sign?
I think you could look at it either way, Mike. I think we touched on this a little bit last week. I think it, could potentially have been beneficial for him to play and get that experience on a team where, they have other ball handlers. They probably play in a more free-flowing style where he would be, the guys setting more screens, playing off the ball a little bit. But at the same time, I think for his image, for his reputation, I think putting the message out there that he's dedicated to, not playing in the Olympics and instead is going to spend that time improving, we assume his shooting mainly in other areas of his game after, what was obviously an embarrassing performance for him. I think that sends a strong message to, to the Sixers and to potentially other teams that, he obviously knows there's weaknesses in his game for as good as he's been and as much as he's accomplished, and he's willing to, put in the work to improve that. Obviously, only time will tell if that work shows up on the court next season and beyond. But I think you could look at it in a positive way that he's, at least aware that he has these shortcomings and he needs to address, and he's saying that he's going to be willing to put in the work over the offseason.
You wrote an article about something Kobe Bryant said to Ben Simmons, and that he has yet to take that advice. What was the advice, and could it still be something that Ben could learn from?
Yeah, Mike, I thought it was really interesting when I saw that quote pop up after the Sixers were eliminated, because it's obviously not advice that, all of us have been shouting at Ben for a few years now, which is to expand his game and to develop a jump shot, because that will take his game to the next level. But I thought coming from Kobe's perspective was especially unique. It's one thing for you or I or a fan to say that to him, but Kobe was approaching it from the perspective of like, listen, you're already this great, and you don't want to have regrets when your career's over about, what could I have done to potentially, have been even better, to take my team even to further heights than I was able to do that. Coming from a player as revered and as well respected and as successful as Kobe was, obviously, I thought that was, a pretty unique message and a different way to approach it. Instead of just saying like, hey, go improve your game, he was saying like, hey, man, like, it might not seem like a big deal to you now because you're still having all this success. You're making all-star teams. You're, defensive player of the year candidate and whatnot, even without this part of your game. But in 10, 15 years, when you're hanging it up, you don't want to be sitting there and being like, man, if I had done that, maybe the Sixers could have won more titles and I would have been a big part of that. So, I just thought that was unique. And obviously, it's definitely not too late for him to do that, Mike. We have, as we've said multiple times, the dude, he's still only 24 years old. He can shoot. You've been there, obviously, at Wells Fargo and watched him warm up for games. You can see that he can physically shoot foul shots. He can shoot three-pointers. It's just so much of a mental thing to me for him at this point. And I think that, it can be corrected. And I think Kobe was right that if he doesn't at least try to, it's one thing to go out there and shoot and miss like we've seen Giannis do in Milwaukee, things like that. But at the end of the day, he can say, at least I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to expand my game. I think if Ben doesn't at least try to do that out on the court, then like Kobe said, he probably will end up with regrets when it's all said and done.
What is really the off-season regimen that you would feel comfortable with for him? Like, if I'm the Eagles, I want him to follow what I want him to do, not what he's done in the past. I don't want him working with his brother. I don't want him going to LA. I don't want him to go here. I want him working under my supervision so that I know I can watch with my own two eyes what he's doing. And then if he's here and he doesn't do that in games, then I know I failed. Whereas if I can't be there with him, I can't supervise what he's doing. So what would you like to see his offseason consist of?
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Mike. I think in the past, the team has obviously been very lenient with him and his approach. Like you alluded to, he's worked with his brother, his family members to improve his shooting. And at this point, the Sixers are obviously at an inflection point. Potentially they trade him. If they do keep him, they're obviously going to need and expect more from him on the offensive end, and especially in terms of his shot. And to me, if I'm the Sixers at this point, I obviously he's a lot free to do and go as he pleases, and I would let him go to California for periods of time. But I would also want him, like you said, in Camden, in their own gym, with their own coaches, working on his shot and seeing charting the improvement over the course of the offseason themselves. I don't know the exact percentage split, maybe something like 70-30, time spent in Philly compared to elsewhere for Ben this offseason. But, I agree with the sentiment that you were saying that he needs to be, not only in Philadelphia, but he needs to be with the Sixers coaches, Doc, the assistants, the shooting coaches. It's going to be a full team effort this offseason to get him, basically to get his confidence back up and improve his game. It's going to be a twofold process, and it's kind of a, all hands on deck situation. So, I agree he should be spending, a bulk of his time of this offseason in Philadelphia working on that game.
MKB at the Real Mike KB on Twitter tonight. You got Hawks and Bucks. The Hawks win that first one. They steal one on the road. This feels like the way we thought the Sixers series was going to go. They stole that one on the road, and now the Bucks have wrestled control. Do they let it go, or do you think the Bucks finally close this thing out with a win tonight and then again on Thursday night?
Yeah, like you said, this kind of mirrored the Sixers series early on, Mike. But unlike the Sixers, I think the Bucks are going to prove to just be too much for Atlanta to handle. I think obviously Giannis has been virtually unstoppable, and he's getting help from Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday in a big way. And the Hawks, as they've been this entire postseason, they're so dependent on Trae Young on the offensive end. They really don't have secondary creators. That they have good shooters and good guys around Trae, but not other guys that can really light it up for you and get you a lot of points. And now Trae's obviously dealing with an ankle injury after twisting it on a referee in that last game. So to me, I think the Bucks kind of found the blueprint. They've done a decent job of limiting him and stopping the others around him from being too impactful. So I think this one is probably going to end up being a gentleman's sweep.
And in the West, we see L.A. get back into it. They're down 3-1. They make it 3-2. What an effort last night from Paul George, a guy who's been questioned a lot. And quite frankly, I'd like to get, Ty Lue's role in this series, because I feel like NBA coaching is one of those things you either, think it's a big portion or you don't. I see him criticized. I see people think he doesn't know what he's doing. I see other people that think he's the difference in this series. You had people criticizing Doc Rivers when they were up 3-1 for not fighting. Now he's getting credit for having him fight. So I feel like this whole Clippers thing has really become an interesting storyline.
Yeah, it absolutely has. And to me, the most impressive thing, Mike, is that they've been doing this, now stretching over 2 series without their best player in Kawhi Leonard, obviously, who hasn't been playing. They were able to close out and win the last 2 games against Utah without him. Now they're, in this series 3-2 to potentially go to the finals without him. And, on paper, I expected the Suns to close it out last night, but the Clippers have just proven to be one of those teams this postseason that you just can't count out. They keep getting, contributions. Last night, DeMarcus Cousins came in and gave them 15 points off the bench after, barely playing in much of the postseason. Reggie Jackson has been, unbelievable for them. Marcus Morris. So they're a team that just keeps getting contributions. And I do think a lot of that credit has to go to Ty Lue, he just seems to be pressing the right buttons. Like he makes the adjustments at the right time. He started Man some games. He started Zubac some games. He was, making consistent adjustments to his rotation. And, so far they seem to pay off. Obviously it'll be tough for them to win 2 more straight without, probably without Kawhi against this Suns team. But at this point, I wouldn't count them out.
Did the Sixers hire the wrong Clippers coach?
That's a good question, Mike, and I think it's definitely fair because they're almost opposites at this point. Where Doc has been being criticized for being a little bit too, set in his ways, a little bit stubborn, a little slow to adjust. Ty Lue is becoming, really lauded and applauded for being very quick on the trigger to make adjustments and swing a series like that. So I think it's a little too early to say that. I'm willing to give the Doc the somewhat of a benefit of the doubt with his first season with the Sixers. I thought they obviously had a great regular season. They came up short in the postseason. But it's a fair argument to make it the way things are shaking out for sure.
All right, last one for MKB. More likely to happen: Ben Simmons here, Ben Simmons gone, or Tobias Harris traded.
That's a great question, Mike, and I think that's a little sneaky thing that a lot of Sixers fans aren't necessarily considering because all the attention's been on Ben Simmons. But I think there's ways to improve this team. As great as Tobias has been, if he's a guy that you could trade to get some dynamic guard play while also keeping the two younger and better players in Ben and Joel, I think that's a route that the Sixers would have to consider. I think it's probably a little bit more likely. To rank those three things, I think the most likely is that Ben will be back. Second is that he'd be traded. And the third, that Tobias would be traded. But I think the possibility that Tobias is the one traded is a little bit higher than, has really been discussed so far, at least.
All right. A crazy offseason will begin here shortly after the NBA Finals. We will certainly be into that, the draft, and much more with Michael Caskey-Blomain, NBA writer from CBS Sports, at The Real Mike KB on Twitter. And, of course, he appeared here on the Sports Bash. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. Happy 4th.
You do the same, man. Happy 4th of July. It is 4th of July weekend, by the way. And with that, we will be off the air on Monday. But we have a nice show planned for you on Monday. We will have the state of the teams. We will have a show all lined up for you guys on Monday. We'll take a look at all the teams, the Phillies, the Sixers, the Eagles, and everything else. Little Flyers in there. We won't go too deep into the Flyers, which I guess the Stanley Cup playoffs are one game into. Oh, my God, it's so crazy. Like right now, there's so much competition. You got the Euros, you got Wimbledon, the Tour de France, you've got the NBA Finals, the NHL Stanley Cup Finals, baseball. I mean, you got a ton going on right now. So the NHL is unfortunately getting lost in the sauce. Plus, you got the Olympic trials going on. Did I forget anything? You said, I mean, I'm not watching the Olympic trials, but did you see that I got something about the Olympic trials that you might be surprised about? I'll save that for the other side. Stick around.
This July 4th at Lowe's, get $10 off 1-gallon cans or $40 off 5-gallon pails on select interior and exterior paints, stains, and coatings via Lowe's gift card rebate. And with everyday appliance savings, save up to $750 now on select major appliances. Lowe's, home to any budget, home to any possibility. Actual size 110 to 640 fluid ounces. Rebate not valid with other discounts. See Lowes.com/rebates for more details. Savings instant in select stores. Exclusions apply. U.S. only. Paint pricing valid through 6/30. In-store must ask cashier to apply coupon. Savings vary based on purchase amount. Can't be combined with additional discounts. Valid through 7/14.
We're planning a trip to Spain later this year.
But our Spanish is...
It's pretty bad. So we're using Babbel.
Babbel's conversation-based method teaches you real-life words and phrases. And with Babbel's interactive, bite-sized lessons, you'll remember what you learned.
There's no easier way to learn another language.
Ahora hablamos español.
He just said, now we speak Spanish.
Babbel, language for life. Now try Babbel for free. Just go to Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
How do you keep a workout fresh every day?
Clap it up, Peloton. Let's do this.
By getting everything from endurance rides to restorative yoga, all right at home. The Peloton Bike. Nothing like working out from home. Visit onepeloton.com to learn more.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, watch the show live video at 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All you need to do is search on those platforms. If you have a smart TV, just bring up the YouTube app, search 973 ESPN. You can watch on your phone, laptop. So, Josh, I got these for you, okay? You said Olympic trials. Nobody cares, right? What was your comment on that?
I was just saying meh, because half the Olympic trials are...
Oh, meh, yeah, we don't care.
Well, I mean, you care about certain things. Like, certain sports you care way more about than others. That's just how we all are. Like, we don't. Like, do you really care about archery?
Well, I went to West Virginia. They're the #1 archery school in the country.
All right, maybe that was a bad example.
No, I'm just kidding. I could care less. Sports TV ratings from this weekend.
Okay. I always like these.
Women's gymnastics Olympic trials. 5.7 million viewers.
I was part of that group.
Wow. See, now you just blasted them, and you're part of the group.
I said certain sports I blast.
All right, well.
I don't care about pole vaulting.
The women's gymnastic Olympic trials had more viewers than the Bucks-Hawks game on TNT.
Hey, the GOAT was in there, Simone Biles.
I get it, but I'm saying, I mentioned all the sports that are going on at this time of the year. Now, I didn't specify which Olympic sport. I just said the Olympic trials, and you said, meh. That's part of the Olympic trials.
Yeah, but I
only put the sports that you care about trials on the television.
I've seen a lot of things on television
archery
I don't care about.
trials on there.
No, but sometimes you see the track and field stuff, and I don't really care that much.
People like track and field.
Nah,
like
not
the
for me.
signature of not. First off, the track and field, swimming, and gymnastics are the signature events of the games.
And the basketball.
Well, the basketball is a different animal. That's like a real, like that. That's a sport that is, I don't want to say a real sport, and these are.
Team sport.
I'm saying it is a sport that is year round all the time. These other sports are only on in the Olympics.
I got you.
Generally, like you don't see gymnastics on Saturday afternoon.
Not Olympic caliber gymnastics.
No gymnastics. No swimming is on. Like you don't sit down on your couch on a Saturday and be like, hey, I'm going to flip on the swim meet.
Well, sometimes you flip the challenge. You see college women's gymnastics.
I mean, rare. And if that happens, it's on some specialty network.
ESPN
this is on
too.
NBC.
It's been on ESPN too.
No. Like you're not seeing track and field on unless it's like some sort of Olympic trial or an equivalent.
Right. Track and field will be some buried network.
Where basketball's on all the time. These are the signature Olympic events.
Right. What the Olympics are known for.
Exactly. Women's gymnastics, which I have no interest in, really. I didn't even know it was on. Now, I saw the swimming the other night. There was a kid from mainland who was close to making the Olympics. I think he needed to finish first or second, and he finished in 5th. And my girlfriend's a swimmer. Her sons swim. So they were into the swimming. So I kind of watched the swimming, Now, funny story is last night, my girlfriend's son, he's a swimmer, and one of my friends, he's also the cheap guy who won't get cable.
Okay.
He's doubling as both.
Oh, no.
They have been betting that they're going to do this race. They're going to have a swim race, right? So he's 15 years old, and my buddy's, 45 maybe, I guess. 44.
So it's a pretty large age.
Yeah. Now, he's built more into the shape of me against my girlfriend's son, who is tall, lanky, slender. He looks like a swimmer.
Right. So the kid, and I've met him, he looks like an athletic swimmer.
Right.
Whereas your buddy looks like he might swim once a year.
Exactly. Now, he's the guy that when you go to like the community pool and they say adult swim, and there's like two old farts swimming in the pool and every poor kid has to get out of the pool. My buddy's the guy that's out there swimming the laps. You're like, dude, really? Like these poor kids have to get out of the pool for 20 minutes so that you can go 4 miles an hour in the pool. So they've been talking about having this race, okay? They've been talking about having the race. Last night was the big race.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
How bad did he beat him?
It wasn't close.
Like it was embarrassing.
Now, there was a time, okay, this is years ago, that I had a producer. It was a female producer I had, and she was a runner. Okay. She believed because she was a runner, and look, I'm not in tip-top shape, right? She believed because she ran and I wasn't in great shape that she could beat me in a race. And I said, listen, I'm not doubting that you're a better long-distance runner than me. You're in tremendous shape. You can do that. But in a 40-yard dash, I'm simply just my legs are stronger, right? I'm just physically stronger. Boom. So we had this race. We had it at a restaurant. Listeners came out and watched the whole thing. She was pumping it up like I didn't have any. I was so far ahead of her. I backwards ran the last 10 yards of the race. It wasn't even close. And I'm by no means suggesting that I'm a speed racer.
No, but it's that certain people their physiology is built for certain things.
Well, last night, that's how the race ended. My buddy was so far behind. My girlfriend's son was going in reverse. He went into a backstroke on the way back and was just my buddy too. He couldn't breathe at all. And then he says, hey, I probably shouldn't have had 3 IPAs before I ran this race. Come on.
Such an excuse.
Right? No, he would have got blasted no matter what.
He should have been training for 6 months instead of drinking the IPA.
But this feels like, what's going on now in the pro boxing where you have the celebrity boxers. That's what people we should just have old guy, former swimmer, racing high school kid who, by the way, doesn't even swim anymore. He hasn't really swam competitively in a year and a half.
Well, speaking of the boxing, the MMA guys are coming for those boxers now.
Yeah, you were saying that yesterday. So what is on the horizon here?
So, well, first of all, Anderson Silva just took out Julio Cesar Chavez.
Anderson Silva fought Julio Cesar Chavez
in a boxing match.
When was this?
A couple weeks ago. He won by TKO. And
See,
Anderson's
it's getting
older.
ridiculous.
And Anderson's
they
older
need
than him.
Can they start some sort of...
but I got one more ridiculous for you. Worse. Oscar De La Hoya is going to fight Vitor Belfort.
I told you that.
That's ridiculous.
Remember that I told you that a couple of weeks ago.
That's the worst one. Vitor is about 10 years younger than Oscar. He's going to kill him.
Well, the funny part is, one of the Paul brothers fought an actual MMA fighter? Oh, Ben Askren.
Right.
And I said, well, this guy's an actual real fighter.
Right, but Asker's got a wrestling background, so he doesn't have a striking background.
True.
Vitor Belfort has a boxing and kickboxing background, like Anderson Silva does. And by the way, Vitor fought at 185 and 205 pounds. He's a much larger man than Oscar is. So you have the larger man, the younger man, fighting Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, how desperate for money is Oscar De La Hoya at this point?
Probably pretty sad, some of these situations.
Oh, and by the way, Pacquiao might not fight Earl Spence now because of a lawsuit between him and Paradigm.
Pacquiao, Spence, I don't have much interest in that. Do you?
Not really.
Do you have more interest in that or the women's gymnastic trials?
Oh, the women's gymnastics trial. I got to see the GOAT. Simone Biles came up with her own move. It's so only her. They actually are deducting her points because she can only do it.
Oh, jeez. All right, football at 4 is coming up next here on the Sports Bash. 97.3 ESPN. The free mobile app, live video at 97.3ESPN.com. Yes, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Andrew DeCecco, InsideTheBirds.com. Of course, we're going to start to take a look at the other divisions in the league. The AFC East is where we'll focus today with Andrew. It's the Bills, it's the Dolphins, it's the Patriots, and it's the Jets. And that division, Andrew, has essentially been the New England Patriots for 20 years. Last year, the Bills finally usurped them, but is it a rite of passage now that it will be the Buffalo Bills again? Do you look at that Buffalo team in the AFC East and say that they are finally the clear-cut favorite in that division?
Yeah, I think Buffalo is definitely the clear-cut favorite in that division. There's some continuity there with Sean McDermott, Brian Dable, the OC, Leslie Frazier, the DC, and Josh Allen's an ascending quarterback with young offensive skill players around him. Stephon Diggs is a terrific complement to his game. He likes to air their football out deep, and they have a young, fast-flowing defense to go with that.
You look at that Buffalo team. You mentioned their defense, which I want to dive into. But Josh Allen, you mentioned the other day you like him. I think we talked about as a top 5 quarterback in the league. You got Josh Allen backed up by Mitchell Trubisky there. But that's not all. I mean, Singletary as a weapon in the backfield, Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders. They've got a lot of weapons here. And as you kind of talked about, that has really pushed Allen over the top from an erratic thrower to a guy who has turned into maybe a top 5 quarterback in this league.
Yeah, and you got to give credit to Brian Dable for working with him and scheming a system around his talents. And Josh Allen, when he came in the NFL, was a raw player, but he always had the tools, which is why he was selected where he was. It just was a matter of, can he put it all together and become the quarterback that we think he can be, that we're using this, premier draft capital and bringing him in. And to his credit, to Josh Allen's credit, and to the coaching staff's credit, they've worked to sort of refine a lot of his skills, and now you're seeing him being one of the more prominent quarterbacks in the NFL. So,
yeah, there's no question that he has really. I mean, it's amazing where that team was, and Josh Allen was kind of a question mark, erratic thrower. And you mentioned, I think, on Friday's show about getting Stephon Diggs and that being a huge part of what happened there. But the quarterback's got to pull it all together. So offensively, they are a pretty solid unit. But defensively, though, this seems to be kind of an underrated defense. They don't have that huge name that jumps off the page, I think, for most of the listeners out there. But if they're going to win a Super Bowl, their defense, I guess, let them down a little bit last year. They're going to have to get a little better here.
Yeah, well, Tre'Davious White is probably the best, in my opinion, the best cornerback in football. He locks down one side. Teron Johnson's a fantastic nickel player. They have 2 safeties in Jordan Poyer, who I think might be one of the most underrated safeties in the National Football League. Micah Hyde's another good compliment to his running mate back there. They also drafted DeMar Hamlin from Pitt, so he's there. Gregory Rousseau, he was more of a luxury pick, a defensive end for Miami, to provide some pass rush. I really think their lack of a consistent pass rush was really what held them back from becoming a Super Bowl contender last season. But you add him, now Star Lotulelei still there, Harrison Phillips, AJ Epinesa the year before, the defensive end from Iowa, he's there. Ed Oliver's still a very solid player. He was their first-round pick in 2019, the defensive tackle. And Jerry Hughes can still play at a high level, and he's a starter there. So, they have a lot of guys.
Buffalo, I think, the favorite in the East. If someone is going to be the runner-up there, it seems to be the New England Patriots. A lot of people think that they might be the contender, maybe not the favorite, but for the first time, not playing that favorite role. This is a different New England team than the one we saw last year, Andrew, but Cam Newton is back. Do you feel that Newton will be the quarterback of this team for the full slate unless he gets injured, or do you think at some point he will be replaced by Mac Jones?
Well, there's no doubt that Cam Newton is not the Cam Newton of old. There's clearly is an evident regression in his skill set. But that said, I think he's still the best option to win the job out of training camp Do I think he's going to hold on to that job? I don't think that he's a consistent enough thrower at this point. I think injuries have taken a toll on him. I think it'll only be a matter of time before Mac Jones takes over there. But I do think that you owe it to Cam Newton right now to kind of give the team the best. It gives them the best hope to get off to a decent start rather than turning the reins over to a rookie who probably isn't ready to step in there right yet. Cam Newton has enough the athleticism and a skill set enough to kind of grind out a couple wins early. But I mean, I think that ultimately his accuracy doesn't have a whole lot of zip on his throws anymore. He's banged up, so I think Mac Jones will probably get the call sooner than later.
Damian Harris, Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Janu Smith. They brought the 2 tight ends in. Does Cam Newton, Mac Jones have the necessary weapons to make this a successful offense?
Well, there's going to be a lot of 12 personnel, and that's really what they need. Obviously, they have Hunter Henry there, Janu Smith, and the receiving core really isn't anything to write home about yet. They did add some pieces there in Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, who I think was underutilized in San Francisco. Akil Harry has not lived up to expectations, but perhaps he can kind of fill a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside type of red zone guy. I kind of equate those 2 players to similar situations. And then you have Jacoby Myers, who is more of a possession guy. He's going to get a lot of the receptions over the middle, keep drives going, and I think he's a very short-handed receiver. So their receiving core last year was probably among the worst in football, but now I think that you add the 2 tight ends, there's going to be a much more of an emphasis on 12 personnel and mixing and matching those receivers based on the coach. So, I mean, I think that they have a good variety there.
We're starting our division previews with Andrew DeCecco for football for the AFC East today. The Patriots defense, they had a lot of guys opt out last year, and it should be a little bit different defense. Gilmore, we'll see what happens with him. McCourty, they signed Mills. Van Noy's a guy they brought back. Hightower's there. Should the Patriots defense be better than the defense that really struggled last year?
Yeah, I think so. And what's really intriguing to me is that they have 2 younger players on the defensive line that are going to probably be in a reserve role, but they're going to be prominent rotational players in Christian Barrymore, who I thought was the only defensive tackle that warranted first-round selection this year in the draft. He went in round 2. Chase Winovich was a player who I really liked, the edge rusher out of Michigan from a couple years ago. They have those guys in the fold, but now they're not. I mean, in Chase's case, he won't be asked to take on the lion's share of snaps. He can kind of be more of a fastball off the edge. You mentioned Kyle Van Noy. Lawrence Guy is a solid player. I believe Matt Judon's there. So, I mean, they and then when you look at Dante Hightower as kind of holding things together at the second level, I think him and having Gerard Mayo there as a defensive coordinator is really you're going to see you're going to see that him sort of take over in that leadership role and just be that consistent presence in the second level and that leader. And then at the second level, or at the third level, I should say, you still have Stephon Gilmore and Kyle Duggar, who was more of he's like a hybrid safety linebacker from Lenore Ryan, and he was a player that I really liked last year in the draft. So they do have some pieces there as well.
All right, let's move over to Miami, who I find to be very interesting. This is a team that seemed like, they were the tank for Tua. They got Tua, and here they are now in his second year. What is, in your opinion, Tua? What is he? Is he a franchise quarterback? Is he a middle of the road guy? Is he a guy that's replaceable? How do you view the Miami Dolphins with Tua?
Well, this year is going to be really telling because last offseason, if you remember, he was still recovering. He didn't really have. I don't know that he was quite at full strength. He needed to gain weight. I think his inexperience showed. But now you have a full offseason, kind of like Jalen Hurts. You have a full offseason. You're able to build continuity with the guys around you. What I saw from him wasn't necessarily. It was very underwhelming, and enough so where you don't want to just automatically say yes, he's the guy, because I think if if a quarterback fell to them, I think they probably would have went that route or strongly considered it. But I mean, we'll see. Give the guy a full offseason. He's healthy now, and he has a year to sort of look at what he was good at and what he struggled at the NFL level. And he's got a lot of playmakers around him. I actually think the Miami Dolphins going to second in that division. I really like what Brian Flores has sort of built there.
Yeah, this team's interesting. They drafted Waddle. Gesicki's a very athletic tight end. Devonta Parker, you saw the Eagles fans saw what he was able to do against them. They brought Fuller in. So they do have some weapons on this offense with Gaskin as the running back there. But that Jalen Waddle and Tua, that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see how those two pair back up. And, is this going to be a team that scores a lot of points? Are they like a high-scoring offense, or is that all dependent on the quarterback?
The pieces, the skill players are in place to have a high-scoring offense that can keep pace with just about anybody. But the question is going to be, can Tua take that next step, or is he going to be more of a game manager? Does he have the arm? Is he a guy or the arm to make all the throws, or is he going to be somebody that the OC tries to mask and try to win games like smoke and mirrors? We have to figure out if he's going to be that quarterback that can elevate that offense and really take that next step in his progression. Because right now we really haven't seen that the skills that warrant that sort of intrigue.
Looking at Miami in the AFC East, Andrew DeCecco, football at 4 here. I love what Flores, his energy and what they bring to the table. Defensively, Byron Jones, they made that signing last year. Howard, we'll see if they end up moving him or not. Eric Rowe, the former Eagle, their secondary is kind of interesting to look at. But defensively, this is that's what Brian Flores is known for. So is that the strength of this Miami Dolphin team, the defense?
It's more balanced now that they added guys like Waddle, and now he can sort of complement, and Will Fuller, who can complement Devontae Parker. Lynn Bowden, somebody who I think that they can utilize. They can find a role for. Remember, he was a running back, he was a quarterback, he was a wide receiver at Kentucky. So I think that there's a number of things that he can bring to the offense. They have a young offensive line. I really like Robert Hunt from Louisiana Lafayette when he was coming out. He's got another year under his belt. Austin Jackson's there at left tackle. Like they really built this thing the right way. But when I really look at their roster, Mike, I think that they've sort of built it. Now it's more balanced. I thought that they were very defensive. They were a defensive-oriented team before the season. But now I think that they've added a lot of players on offense to sort of complement what they already had. But I mean, when you look at Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis. They have Jalen Phillips, so they added from the other Miami pass rusher in the first round.
Right.
Javon Holland's a good free safety. One of my favorite safeties in the draft, I would say. He went a little bit higher than I thought, but he's going to be in the mix, playing alongside Eric Rowe. We'll see what Byron Jones can do. Jason McCourty's there as another veteran presence to sort of be a leader in that third level. And then Justin Coleman's a good nickel corner, and that's arguably one of the most important positions on defense in today's NFL. So.
Miami Dolphins, you picked them for second. It'll be interesting, as you mentioned. Tua, to me, is such a key for that team. He's really got to take a step forward. I read some reports that they're going to try to do more downfield passing with him, and that he did not have a good day trying to throw the ball down the field in some of the camps they had earlier this month. So we'll see. I think that team can go as far as Tua takes them. Now you go over to the Jets, who have been a disaster, as we know, Andrew. They took Zach Wilson, and he will jump in and start right away. Is this team, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Jamison Crowder, Tevin Coleman, are they built to help Wilson be successful right away?
I think the one key guy that you forgot to mention is someone who I think might end up having one of the biggest impacts, and Elijah Moore, the receiver from Ole Miss. Because he can be that security blanket over the middle. He can do dynamic things out of the backfield. You can line him up all over the place, and he's going to create mismatches. He's an NFL-ready receiver. I think he's going to get out to some early success. So those will be fantasy football guys. I think he'd be a good guy to sort of bookmark at the end of those drafts as someone's going to find success. But, I mean, Corey Davis is coming off his best season as a pro. He's been a really streaky player. But, I mean, the receiving core has been, in the past few years for the Jets, has just been abysmal. I actually think that Jamison Crowder is one of the best slot receivers in the league. And if you look at the stats that he's been able to accumulate in his time with the Jets, he's been really consistent when he's been available. So I think he's another player that gets overlooked when you assess the wide receiver position in the NFL, largely due to the ineffectiveness of the Jets offense as a whole. But I'm just not a big Zach Wilson guy. I don't necessarily think that he will get off to a fast start as a rookie. I think he's going to endure some growing pains, but I do think that surrounding him with a veteran receiver like Corey Davis, getting him and a do-it-all receiver like Elijah Moore, and surrounding him with a very a vastly improved offensive line. You got to give credit to Joe Douglas there. I think that's going to put him in a position to be successful. Now it's going to be ultimately up to him to sort of take the bull by the horns.
Yeah, they just brought Morgan Moses in. They drafted Ali Vera Tucker, who will probably slide into that left guard spot. So the offensive line should be better for the Jets. You mentioned Moore, who they did draft as well. So some young pieces mixed around. Some veterans for Zach Wilson. Now on defense, this defense seemingly kept drafting the defensive front, Quinnen Williams. They've now got Vinny Curry over there. C.J. Mosley was a guy who was a pretty high-profile player. But defensively, what can we expect from this Jets team? So if the offense is pretty good, let's say Wilson exceeds your expectations and they make them competitive, where's this defense in your mind?
Well, I think ultimately the first and second level are vastly improved, but I think that when you look at the secondary, there's still a lot of holes and a lot of question marks there. Son Austin, one of the cornerback spots, very inconsistent player. Bryce Hall was somebody who I liked. They drafted him in the 4th round last year out of Virginia, the corner. He was on a very fast track to being an early draft pick, but suffered an injury there in his last season in Virginia. So he sort of fell in the draft. But, see what he can do there. They're very young and inexperienced at the cornerback spot. Marcus May is an underrated safety, and he's got Ashton Davis playing next to him. That's a good safety tandem. I think they'll sort of man the middle there and direct traffic, so to speak. And then we'll see what C.J. Mosley can do at the middle linebacker spot. He was somebody that they invested a lot of money in a couple of years ago. Got hurt in the opener against Buffalo, and they really felt his absence. They spent a lot of money to bring him in there and to be that sort of physical presence in the middle of their defense. And let's not forget they added Carl Lawson as well at right defensive end. He gave Jason Peters quite a fit in week 3 last season, so I believe he had 3 sacks against him. So he's going to provide some juice off the edge as well.
2-14, the Jets last year. Obviously, they struggled big time. They will face the Eagles this year. That is the team the Eagles will face in that extra 17th game. A 2-win team, the New York Jets. What do you think of Salah as the hire?
I think he fits that identity, that hard-nosed mentality that's going to kind of bring that defensive presence to the AFC East. And I think he's really going to get the most out of a lot of the young players that he has there. Blake Cashman, the linebacker, he's a physical freak. Quinnen Williams, the young secondary. I think they're just going to have a new hardened approach to the way that things are done there, as opposed to the Adam Gase regime, where there wasn't a whole lot of leadership and the team was didn't really have a lot of direction, to be quite frank with you. I think right now you're going to see them adopt more of a physical, punishing presence with Robert Saleh at the helm.
Andrew DeCecco at A DeCecco NFL, and we start our division previews today with the AFC East. It sounds like you say Buffalo, Miami, New England, the Jets is what you're looking at. I know it's we're in June, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, I'd say so. A lot can happen, but before entering training camp on paper, that's the way I have it.
All right, Andrew's back on Friday, and on Friday we will take a closer look at the AFC North. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh might be one of the more entertaining divisions in all of football. Next week we'll be on the South and the West before we flip over to the NFC, and that will lead us right into Eagles camp, which begins less than 1 month from today. Looking forward to that. Andrew, appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. Take care.
All right, Football at 4, Andrew DeCecco. It is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops Thursday at 6 a.m. with Adam Kaplan and Jeff Mosher. Mosher's back tomorrow. Andrew back on Friday. Adam's here on Thursday's show. This hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and make a profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. We're jamming today. Do you remember it's June 29th? These are big-time events that happened on June 29th. We'll go over them coming up on the other side. Plus, at 5 o'clock tonight, Mitch Lawrence from Sirius XM NBA Radio is here. Mitch always has an opinion. I'm going to ask him what kind of value he thinks Ben Simmons has. Plus, I got text messages, video messages, and I also want to I got a question that I'm going to need some help with you guys from you guys out there, and I will do that coming up. And by the way, at 5:25 tonight, my conversation with Mark Zumoff, who announced today that he is retiring effective immediately. He will not call Sixers games next season. The great Mark Zumoff, my final conversation that I had with him. This is from back during the pandemic. We had him on, and we kind of asked him to tell us his story about how he became the Sixers play-by-play voice. So we will play that interview for you today on a day that Mark Zumoff has announced that he is hanging up the microphone. All right, 427 on your Tuesday. It is, do you remember? These are things that happened on this day. June the 29th. Josh Henning's my producer. Now, I will go over these events and get Josh's quick quip on these. But I do have a question I need the listeners to help me out with in just a little bit as well, so don't forget about that. This day, 1990. I remember this. This is bizarre. I do remember this. 1990, on this day, 2 no-hitters on the same night. Do you remember the 2 pitchers?
What year was this?
1990. I could get both pitchers. If you asked me this question, I'd get them both. How many people out there listening can get both the pitchers? 2 no-hitters on the same night.
Was one Martinez from the Expos?
No, but that might have been the same year.
Okay, might have been the same year.
Dennis Martinez.
Yeah.
He had that big thing of Red Man in it. Do the baseball players still chew Red Man?
Very rarely.
I don't see that ever.
I don't see that anymore.
Ever. Like, is Red Man still a thing?
Probably not.
Big old chaw?
Probably been absorbed by some other company that's got some fancy commercial on television.
You don't think it exists anymore, you're saying?
Like, it might have been like absorbed by like they bought out kind of thing. That's what I would think.
But so you don't think it even like has a I think you could go to the store and still buy Red Man Chew, right?
Maybe.
I don't think I see anybody.
I've never seen anybody.
Actually, you know what? I watched the A&E biography on Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he had it in his truck.
Just him. He's keeping the business alive.
Yeah, Stone Cold had it. Anybody know who the 2 pitchers were through a no-hitter in the same day on this day in 1990?
Wow. Well, I tried Martinez and I was wrong.
No. Ready?
Yeah, give it to me.
Oakland Athletics pitcher.
I was going to say, is Nolan Ryan one of them?
No, that's a good guess, though. A's pitcher Dave Stewart and L.A. pitcher Fernando Venezuela. Both throw no-hitters on the same day. Stewart wins 5-0, and Venezuela beats the Cardinals 6-0.
Stewart would have been on the list. I would have eventually gotten there, but not Venezuela. I didn't know he threw a new head.
Well, you remember Fernando pitched for the Phillies.
Yeah. That was something you wanted to forget.
Not memorable?
Something you want to forget. No, at that point, Fernando was pretty late in his career, though, to have a no-hitter. So.
Fernando was the man for a while.
Fernando Mania.
Yeah, for those of you who are young, Fernando, go look him up. Fernando Mania was
superstar.
He was unbelievable. Smoke Stewart was very interesting. He was one of the guys that got good late in his career.
Stewart was also a guy that was kind of like one of those intimidator type pitchers.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of intimidating pitchers, 2004, Randy Johnson is the 4th pitcher for 4,000 strikeouts. He strikes out Jeff Cirillo of the Padres. Now, Randy Johnson, to me, was maybe one of the most dominating pitchers I've ever watched. 6'10". He just threw gas. He had that nasty slider. You almost wondered how he lost ever.
He was one of those pitchers that also you knew that you had to watch. Like, remember you talk about Mike, how appointment viewing when it comes to pitchers? He was appointment viewing.
It's so weird, though, that I don't know. When I list my best pitchers, do you put him in that, like, these are the top 5 that I ever saw? Sure. For some reason, I feel like he doesn't – like, I have Roger Clemens, Pedro Martinez. Pedro was –
oh, yeah. Pedro from, 96 to, 2003 was, apex.
You almost got to put Jacob deGrom in there now. Like, he would bump somebody out.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, definitely. You also got to throw in there probably Greg Maddux.
I was going to say, Greg Maddux, when I was growing up, was when Maddux pitched, that was, okay, we're losing.
Also, I mentioned his name earlier. Nolan Ryan was appointment viewing, even at an older age. He was
but he wasn't. If he's pitching, you're winning.
No, but he was pitching. You had to watch.
You did.
That's how I love the mentality and the chess match of pitching. And I love to see the different types of pitchers and how they attack hitters. And Nolan Ryan, Pedro, Randy Johnson, you mentioned Clemens. Another guy, he's not in that group, but he was fun to watch, was probably a guy like Andy Pettit as well. Andy Pettit was a guy that really worked the plate.
I wasn't a big Pettit. He was like the left-handed version of Maddux.
Still was fun.
Right. I wasn't a huge Pettit guy.
Another guy you got to throw in there is Roy Halladay.
Yeah, I was going to say Halladay would be another one. When he was with Toronto, how about when Clemens pitched for Toronto?
Yeah.
People forget about when Clemens went to Toronto, how dominating he was up there.
He was that was what resurrected his career. People thought he was washed up in Boston.
Yep.
He goes to Toronto and proves that he's still a stud. And the Yankees were like, we could use you.
Yep. And then he actually went to the Astros.
Yeah, him and Pettit.
And was pretty darn good with the Astros.
They almost won the World Series. But they lost to the White Sox.
Crazy. The White Sox won a World Series. Now, the Astros, by the way, do you look back at all the cheating and stuff now and look at it differently? They're like the best team in baseball. They're one of the best teams in baseball.
I actually enjoy the fact they're doing well. I think that I love seeing them thumb their nose at everybody and say, stick it.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially
I never
Altuve.
really, the whole cheating thing, I thought people made such a big deal out of it.
I love when Altuve hit the home run the other day, and he's just like staring at the road crowd like, yo, eat this.
How about this one? On this day in 1984, Orel Hershiser begins a string of making every scheduled start until 1990. Do you find that to be impressive?
Yes. I also have to say that he had a great scoreless inning streak.
He
too.
did.
What was it, 56 innings?
Yeah, I mean, he had the I think you're right, 56 and whatever, 2/3 or whatever it was. But I never realized that he made every start for 6 straight seasons.
He was the Bulldog from South Jersey, too.
Great, Jerry Hill.
There you go.
1986, Boston trades for Tom Seaver. Now, this is towards the end of the Tom Seaver career.
Right, that was the very end of the career.
Yeah, this is like when it's like, you see Steve Carlton moving from like the Phillies to the Giants, to the White Sox,
back to the Cardinals.
all sorts of crazy stuff like that.
Oh my goodness.
All right, what else we got here? It's funny. This picture of Fernando, he is in a Angels uniform. I don't even remember him pitching for the Angels.
I definitely don't remember that.
I just happened to pop that up. I was like, wait a second. This picture. 1992, the NHL decides Eric Lindros goes to the Flyers instead of the Rangers.
Huge moment.
That was the whole arbitrator
getting involved.
There's the whole thing on NBC Sports Philadelphia. They do the whole thing on Lindros.
Yep.
It's pretty interesting. What was the arbitrator's name, man?
I don't remember the arbitrator's name, but I remember the whole thing was that remember there was a whole argument. There was a third team that got involved too, because there were multiple teams that were like demanding that they should have had a piece of that situation.
Well, I know it was down to the two. It was the Flyers and the Rangers. It was between them, and because he didn't want to go to Quebec.
Correct. The whole point was he didn't want to go to Quebec. Yeah. But man, what a fiasco that was.
That story is unbelievable.
If that would have happened today, that would have been like
coming in.
Oh my goodness! It would have been emails.
Now it would be like text messages. You'd have all
how many DMs were involved?
Yeah, you would have like a whole chain of them. Back then it was like a fax.
Yeah, now you would have had to bring like the string of like the messages from like your inbox to the arbitrator.
I couldn't even imagine an arbitrator getting involved to decide on who's making the trade or getting the trade. 1994. Purdue small forward Glenn Big Dog Robinson is the first pick of the draft by the Milwaukee Bucks.
That was an interesting team when it was him, it was Sam Cassell, and with Ray Allen. Remember that?
Yeah, they would play the Sixers.
Yeah, they were a pretty good team.
They had, what was his name? I remember where he went to college. I can't think of his name. The center.
Where do you go to college?
Hartford.
Now I'm drawing a blank too.
University of Hartford.
Center.
Yeah. Vin Baker. Was Vin Baker on that team?
He was the power forward, yeah, later on because he was part of that huge, crazy trade. Well, he was involved with 2 crazy trades. He was involved in a trade that got him to Milwaukee, then later that got him to Seattle.
Yeah, Vin Baker. All right, what else we got here today for you? Oh, boy. All right, I got 1 or 2 more. We'll do 1 or 2 more.
All right, what do you got for me?
I got 2007, Barry Bonds hits his 750th career home run. How do you look at the whole Bonds home run thing?
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
I agree with the Hall, but like, is he the home run champion? Do you not acknowledge that?
I acknowledge it because of the fact that he didn't take steroids to hit home runs or HGH, wherever he took. We haven't fully verified, but he took it because he was trying to prove a point. And I think he proved his point very well. He was so mad that McGuire and Sosa were getting all the attention when they were juicing that he wanted to say, watch what happens when I pop it. And watch these balls go out of the park.
I mean, I agree that he's a Hall of Famer. The 750, it's almost like not a magical number, though. That's the problem.
I would say that most
the number
of
has been tainted.
I would say most of baseball's numbers at this point are
right, but that's the thing. Like the number, 714 used to be magic. Like it was like mythical, and now you're just like 750. Like if you ask somebody, they don't know what the home run number is anymore.
No, they don't. I would say the only magical number anymore in baseball that's like legitimately magical is 3,000 hits.
Well, you got the consecutive game streak. I mean, not the hit streak. I mean,
well, the hit streak
56.
is unattainable to me.
Yeah, well, in today's day and age, you're
but I mean, like
right.
a magical number that someone could theoretically get to.
Yeah,
it's 3,000.
2012, U.S. Anti-Doping Agency files charges against Lance Armstrong, accusing the 7-time Tour de France winner of using performance-enhancing drugs throughout his best year of his career. I bring this one up because I watched the Lance Armstrong 30 for 30 and thought it was one of the best ones.
It was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, that story is outrageously incredible. If you it's raining on a Saturday and you want to say, I got to turn on the 30 for 30 on Lance Armstrong.
And by the way, it's a two-parter, so you got to.
You need a day. That's why I said if it's raining
they
out.
They leave you a nice cliffhanger at the end of part one.
It's good. It's really good. That sport's just littered with. I don't understand why we've gotten to a point in our lives where everything has to be like if everyone just went all natural, can't we just compete like that?
Why can't we be friends?
Yeah. Fernando, wasn't he the guy at some point during this windup? He would actually close his eyes, which kind of made it seem like a little more scary. He kind of like looked up. I don't know if he closed his eyes.
Yeah, he had that thing where he turned and looked and then turned back around. He had that crazy windup that made him, such a phenomenon because no one ever saw a lefty like him before.
Yeah, I mean, he would do the delivery and then he would kind of look up to the sky
as he turned back away from the hitter.
Yeah, I don't know that he closed his eyes. I don't know that I can verify that. I
mean, if he did close his eyes, it doesn't change anything. It was amazing.
Yeah, he had a short. He was had this short burst.
Yeah, there were a handful of guys over the years that were like him that had these like bursts, and you were like, wow.
Yeah,
and they fizzled out.
Mike, you've seen another pitcher that I enjoyed watching. Pedro was my favorite. Clemens was my favorite player of all time.
Right,
but Pedro was awesome.
Yeah, Pedro, I loved watching him too. There was something about him, the way he carried himself too, that just you either loved him or you hated him. It was so much fun.
Sports Bash this hour is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. The Phillies, a disaster loss last night. They're playing the Marlins. I would imagine that
they lose tonight.
No, they'll probably win. This is the kind of game that you win because they get beat up. They are embarrassingly lost, and then it's a team that everybody's like, "Oh, we always lose to the Marlins," and they'll go out there and win tonight. I think Gene Segura is back today, right? He is.
Girardi's saying that he's supposed to be back. Yeah.
Girardi says he is playing tonight. He hasn't decided on a lineup yet. I have not seen the lineup.
Competitive advantage.
Well, I doubt it.
I just hate these people who are like, we're not going to tell you yet.
Yeah.
You're going to find out when everybody else does. Like, what's the point?
No corresponding.
Like, why does Doc Rivers have to wait until like 30 minutes for game time to tell the lineup?
Well, normally the lineup's out, but they haven't put it out yet. Like normally you'll see them put it out.
But they're probably waiting for whatever move they have to make.
Yeah, no corresponding move has been made yet. I would imagine, that's a good question. Who's the guy that goes down? Nick Maton. They could use him in the bullpen.
Right.
Or
you send Perez down and put Maton.
I got to try to figure that out. Let me look at their 25 man and see who is the guy, the odd man out. All right, I'll be back. But he's a. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, free mobile app. This hour brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. They got a great story, by the way. Have you read the Prop Swap story about the ticket that they had with the $45 for a Canadian Stanley Cup ticket when they were down 3-1 to the Maple Leafs? If they win this series, that guy paid $45 to win $10,000. That's what Prop Swap can do for you. Like, if I'm in the NBA playoffs right now, you could have got a Clippers ticket, I'm sure, over the last couple of days when they were down 3-1. You know, you do something like that. Hey, here's $25 on a Clippers ticket, and if it hits, big payout there. Someone's got PropSwap just sold a huge Phoenix Suns, that one that we've been talking about with the plus 140 odds. It just sold a little while ago. So if you're a bettor, if you're a real bettor, if you're somebody who likes to make money, you go on PropSwap and you just start kind of going through the catalog of tickets. That's the best way to do it. Or buy your own tickets and sell them. That's the best way. By the way, congratulations to our good buddy Colin Thompson. Got married this weekend down in Cape May. Yep. So, by the way, did you see everybody all ticked off that Gary Thorne didn't get announced as the play-by-play guy for ESPN? He's trending on Twitter. Gary Thorne is actually trending on Twitter. Now, I didn't see who. The ESPN play-by-play team will be Sean McDonough. Steve Levy will be the studio guy. John Butchergrass, Bob Wischusen, and Leah Hextall will also do some play-by-play stuff. And so people are all disheveled about the fact that Gary Thorne is – how old's Gary Thorne now, though? I mean, God, he's got to be old. Gary Thorne, who was doing, I think, the last job he had, he's 73. Gary Thorne was doing the Orioles games. I remember being down in Baltimore a couple summers ago, and Gary Thorne was doing Baltimore games. Gary Thorne did the ESPN hockey games with you-know-who, right? It was Gary Thorne and Bill Clement. Right, exactly. Now, Clement, I think, is done doing the Flyers. He didn't do Flyers games this past year. I said something right before the break, and I can't remember exactly what I said. What was I saying right before the break? And I said, I'll tell you. I can't remember that. But here's the other ESPN crew. It's Mark Messier, Chris Chelios, Ray Ferraro, Brian Boucher, Kevin Weeks, Ryan Callahan, Rick DiPietro, Barry Melrose, Hillary Knight, Cassie Campbell Pascal, and Ryan Callahan. So that is your crew. ESPN's putting some interesting names, and they're putting something together for this. Now, I didn't see the Turner one yet. The NHL, of course, is going back to ESPN, so that's why everybody's, Gary Thorne and Bill Clement were the ESPN duo there for a long time. So Frank Close just tweeted out 2 minutes ago that the Phillies roster changes. Oh, that's what I said I was going to do. Try to figure out, he said the Phillies roster changes are delaying the Phillies lineup. I wonder if the Phillies do something bold, like demote someone you don't expect. So I said, they're bringing Segura back. So who would be the guy who would be the odd man out here? And he just said something that's interesting. Do they demote someone that you don't expect? Who might that be? Well, obviously, they could do Neftali Felice. They could do Spencer Howard if they don't plan on pitching him again in the rotation, as Frank kind of indicated earlier. They could do, I guess, who else could they demote? It's got to be a pitcher, you would think. One problem they have, too. Somebody asked me this the other night, about Bohm and Hoskins. They don't really Brad Miller is a terrible defensive player. Luke Williams doesn't really have a position. He's just kind of like a utility guy. Maton's okay, but they don't have another first baseman on the roster other than Hoskins. They don't have really another third baseman on the roster. Not that Bohm's their best third baseman. Brad Miller's a butcher over there, and Luke Williams, I guess his first position's his third base, but they don't have, remember I said the best manager for this team would be Jim Fregosi? Yeah, well, he had a roster that allowed him to be a great manager. If you don't have a roster to be a great manager, it's hard to be a great manager. You got to have a roster to be able to push the right buttons. I know I have Alec Bohm, a lousy third baseman, and I want his bat in the lineup, but late in the game, I want to be able to take him out. Well, they don't have anybody to do that. They don't have someone to go replace Rhys Hoskins at first base late in the game. They just don't have the versatility. Brad Miller, as your bench player, is not a good defensive player. So you don't have these guys that could say, hey, I can go play first. Hey, you're sitting on the bench here. Someone that's that corner infielder that can play some third, play some first. They don't have that guy on the team. So they're kind of stuck at those two positions with two lousy defensive players. And it's similar, in the outfield right now, the only outfielders on their roster are Bryce Harper, Odubel Herrera, McCutchen, and Travis Jankowski. So you don't have a guy that's really a reserve fourth outfielder. That's why they have to keep sticking Brad Miller in the outfield. You'll see him play right field when Bryce Harper's hurt once a week. Luke Williams has been playing some outfield because McCutchen, they don't want him playing every single day. I mean, think about the center field position that they had at the beginning of the year. Roman Quinn and Adam Hastley. And then they went to Mickey Moniak. They've played 3 center fielders, and none of them are on the roster right now. I would be surprised. No, actually, I wouldn't be surprised. Mike, did you see that the Seattle Kraken named the Dave Haxtell the new? That happened like 2 weeks ago. I mean, it was like earlier it was like last week, but yeah, a text message that just came in. Yes, I did see they named Dave Haxtell. That was a while ago. Not surprised. I mean, I'm surprised. Oh, by the way, there's the move. Spencer Howard has been sent to AAA. So that's the move. Spencer Howard optioned to AAA to open up the roster spot for Segura. So there you go. So that's not, I mentioned him as a guy. Now, do I think that's the right move? Yeah. If you're not going to use him in the position that I said you should, then fine. That's the right move. If he's not going to be in the starting rotation and you don't have the cones to put him at closer, which you should, Spencer Howard should be pitching in high leverage situations in your bullpen. Your bullpen is a disgrace, and he's the best arm you got. He obviously gets guys out over a 2-inning span, but he has trouble after that. Why wouldn't you say, look, this summer, we're just going to use him in these high leverage situations? I don't understand it. This isn't hard. This is not brain surgery. I mean, that's probably the easiest move in front of them. Spencer Howard, look, we like what you have. You have good stuff. We're going to try to use you in some high leverage situations. Our bullpen is really poor. We think you can help us there. Neftali Feliz, you had a nice career. We tried you last night. Your ERA is 40-50. I think that tells you all you need to know. Or Enyel De Los Santos. right, 5 o'clock here, driving you home on a Tuesday. And, of course, the NBA playoffs continue tonight on 97.3 ESPN. It's Bucks and Hawks, Game 4. Looks like the Bucks have tried to grab control of this series, something the Sixers couldn't do. We'll look at the East, the West Conference Finals, Sixers offseason, some coaching hires. The great Mitch Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA Radio, is set to join me here on the Sports Bash. This hour brought to you by your Delaware Valley Acura dealers. For great deals on Acura's award-winning lineup, shop online at DelValAcuraDealers.com. All right, here we go. Always fun when we get Mitch on the show. We know a lot happened in these NBA circles. Mitch, how you been?
Mike, I'm doing great. I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen with Trae Young tonight, because if Trae Young can't push off that leg, you saw he's got the bone bruise, the ankle that affected him the other night, and the Hawks are pretty much finished. I thought the Clippers were finished without Kawhi and Zubac, and they proved me wrong. So who knows what'll happen, right?
Yeah, but I would imagine, without Kawhi and Zubac for them to be here, that's another story. But you would imagine that Trae Young might be the most important guy left with what they have around him.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And you saw it the other night. He just couldn't push off. He had no explosion when he got hurt. And, I mean, how about the fact that we've had a zillion injuries this year? The league's been totally ravaged, and it's affected, as we know, all kinds of stars. And here's a guy who steps on the foot of not another player, not opposing player, but of an official, a referee. So that kind of just sums up where we are here. And it's just, it'll be too much for Atlanta to overcome if he can't be close to 100%. I don't expect him to be, because they just don't have anybody else who can fill his shoes. He hasn't been getting a lot of help as it is. The other night, Bogdanovich was terrible shooting. Herter couldn't make a big shot. They've figured out how to deal with Capella and Collins. And then conversely, for the Bucks, one of the dumber teams you'll ever see, they just don't know who to get the ball to at the right spot. Boy, they actually force-fed the ball to Chris Middleton the other night. He had 13 shots in the fourth quarter. Epic fourth quarter for him, and that's the way they gave the series lead. But, yeah, the whole thing with the Hawks revolves around Young. So if he isn't close to 100%, they're in hot water, and I don't think he will be.
You just said something interesting, which is it's funny, the Bucks, and everybody keeps kind of questioning Budenholzer and almost had him fired and almost had guys hired to replace him. Here they are, likely to go to the finals. What happens with that whole situation?
Well, if they go to the finals, he's not going to get fired. The big rumor that was going around the last couple of weeks after Rick Carlisle left Dallas was that Rick Carlisle was going to get the Bucks job. And that was basically what everybody was thinking about. But obviously, Budenholzer getting out of the last round was huge against Brooklyn. And now he's 2 wins from going to the NBA Finals, where the Bucks haven't been since, 1974, when they were in the Western Conference Finals. So I don't expect him to be fired, although I will say this. If somehow they lose to Atlanta here, being up 2-1, and a less than 100% Trae Young, never say never, right? I mean, the Bucks have to win this series now. No ands, ifs, or buts.
I got to wonder, and you always speak candidly, so I'm not worried about that. Can a team win the title with Chris Middleton as their fourth quarter closer? I mean, the way this all works with Giannis really giving them 30 for 3 quarters, and then he acquiesces to Middleton.
Sometimes Middleton's better than Giannis. Giannis, the thing you learn about Giannis is that, even though he's got these 2 MVPs, so we view him through that prism, there are only 13 players in the history of the league with back-to-back MVPs. He struggles offensively. He struggles with his feel for the game. There are certain times where he does the wrong thing. And you're just like, why doesn't he have a better grasp of the situation? But I'll say this, they could, why they could win a title? Because look at the competition. If you go back go back 17 years to 2004 when the Pistons won the title, that's basically where we all talk about what's the last team without a star to win a title. And it was that Pistons team against Kobe and Shaq, and Kobe and Shaq were at odds, and Phil Jackson had 1 foot out the door, and Karl Malone is hurt. But the Pistons really routed them pretty big, right? We know that. But they don't have, like Ben Wallace is a borderline Hall of Famer. Okay, he got him. But they got Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, that team. That team would, I think, beat any of the teams left right now, and pretty handily. That Piston team that went to 6 straight Eastern Conference Finals. That Pistons team that won a title in 2004, lost in a seventh game in San Antonio the next year in the NBA Finals in Game 7, right? Lost on the road, and then lost to the eventual champions in 2006 Miami and 2008 Boston. That 6-year run, that team is, to me, head and shoulders above any of the teams left right now, that Piston team.
That's interesting. Mitch Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA radio. So in the end, when we look back at this, I guess, COVID era, the bubble and then the preceding, the season, this season here, do we look differently at the two do we now look at that Laker team and say,
Well, I looked at the Laker team and said, okay, it's a title, but it's not like a real title. And why? They never had to travel. They never played real road games. Yeah, that's a big difference than even this year when teams have to travel. Remember, LeBron, all he had to do was get in a limousine or a bus and go a couple of miles from his hotel to play road games, quote-unquote road games, against Portland, against Houston, and against Denver.
Yep.
That's not the same thing.
No.
And it's not the same thing when Jamal Murray has 2 quote-unquote road games at Salt Lake City and scores 50 points in both of them for the Nuggets. And they were in a neutral gym with no fans.
Right.
So, of course, it wasn't the same thing. I'm not gonna sit here and say it deserves an asterisk. I'm going to tell you it's not the same thing. And everybody, you talk to former players, they all agree, especially guys who have won a title. Now, this year, what is the year of? I mean, we've had an amazing amount of injuries. It's never besides the COVID, we've seen, what was it last count? 9 guys who had been all-stars at one point in their life and missed at least one game in the playoffs, and that was as of the second round. It's very, now, I'm not going to tell you that the winner deserves an asterisk. No, I'm not going to tell you that. What I'll tell you is that these teams playing now, well, let's put it this way. Of all the teams that are left, how many future Hall of Fame players are there? How many future guys, if they ever have a top 75 player, all-time 75 player team for this first 75 years of the NBA, like they had for the first 50 years, and 75 years, I believe, is this year, next year, however you want to count it. How many of those guys are going to make those teams, the Hall of Fame or the top 75 team? A couple?
Yeah, I guess you would. I mean, I don't know. You're putting a guy like Trae Young there already, Devin Booker.
No.
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul would have to me, win the title to be in the top 75. He'd have to win the title. That's it for the Suns right now. I can't put Booker there. I couldn't put Ayton there. Forget about the other guys. You look at the Clippers, Paul George, he's not a top 75 player of all time. He gets paid like one.
Yeah.
He's like Rudy Gobert. They're on the all-overpaid team. Although, a game like last night, then you start, you go back and forth on Paul George because some nights he can't make free throws. That kills their team. It kills the team. Last night he can make all the shots. And then who's left? You got the Bucks. Giannis is going to be a top 75 player of all time, even though he struggles offensively, unlike anybody else. Why? Because he's a back-to-back MVP winner. And like I said, there are only 12 other guys who have done that. And in Atlanta, there's nobody right now. Well, I'm not going to anoint Trae Young.
Right.
He has had a phenomenal first run in the playoffs, and I expect him, he's lifted his team, and he's put his imprint on these games. And ever since game 1 of the playoffs against the Knicks, where he won that game late in the Garden against the Tom Thibodeau defense, that Atlanta's got a special player. What do they need to do? They got to get a second star there in a really bad way. I mean, their second star right now, they lost DeAndre Hunter. He's not a number 2 star. You could tell that right now. Bogdanovich, these other guys, Collins, who wants max money. He's not a max player. Forget about Clint Capella. You know what he needs? He needs a guy like if he wasn't such a diva, Karl Anthony Towns. He needs a guy like, if he played both ends and wasn't overweight, a Zion Williamson. That's what Trae Young needs now.
That's an interesting, like you mentioned, max money, not a max player. These franchises are like prisoners of, if I let you walk, then you're constantly in this moment of, if we don't bring this guy back, we're essentially on the hamster wheel of either mediocrity or tanking. So we got to give you max money so that you know what I'm saying? When you just said that, it kind of stood out to me. It's like the Sixers, they have Tobias Harris. Well, if they don't pay him, someone else is going to pay him. And then we constantly say, well, they all make too much money.
Well, let me ask you this. If they lost Tobias Harris, you can't replace him? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Really?
No, I think you could.
They haven't replaced Jimmy Butler. Start there. That's their problem. We see it time and again. And I brought it up on your show. The Jimmy Butler loss has really hurt that franchise because they don't have a closer. They don't have a guy who you can depend on to finish a game. Ben Simmons, he's got head problems. He needs to see a psychologist. He doesn't want to shoot. Joel Embiid, unreliable from the get-go. History of injuries. He can't do it late in games. That's what Jimmy Butler did from him, and that's what they're missing.
Yeah.
And so, Tobias Harris is overpaid. And I'm telling you, if he left, you could replace a guy like him.
I agree with that. The problem is, like, with the cap situation, like, all right, so, like you just mentioned, who was it? Collins wants max money.
Yeah, John Collins wants max money.
Right, exactly.
You know, and by the way, I'm not going to pick on, how about a guy like Rudy Gobert, who's all defense, and in the playoffs, does it matter that he's a defensive player in the year? Does he really? Let me ask you, have you ever watched a game where you said, wow, that's like what Bill Russell used to do? He is absolutely imposing his will at the defensive end. I can't think of one game I've ever seen Rudy Gobert do that. Not even for France.
No, but I'm saying, like, these franchises, I feel like their backs are to the wall. If you let Rudy Gobert walk and you lose that aspect, you're replacing him with what? I don't know. I mean,
well, here's what you replace him with. You replace him with a guy who might be able to step out and make shots at center. Like, join the NBA in 2021. Don't leave it up to Donovan Mitchell. Don't leave it up to Mike Conley. Go get a scorer. I mean, all the defense is so overrated these days. And I know Doc Rivers and the Sixers, that's all they talk about is defense. Is that what beat the Nets in the final aspect? In the 5 minutes of the overtime of Game 7, they scored 2 points.
Yeah.
They allowed 6 points and lost the game.
I guess, Mitch, the thing would be, like, if Tobias Harris didn't sign the deal here, he signs with somebody else for essentially not the max that he could have got from Philly, because he gets more from Philly, but he's going to sign a contract that
it would have been comparable.
Right.
And let me ask you this. I don't want to bang on Tobias Harris, but is he a max player?
No,
really?
No, absolutely not. You're absolutely right about that. But it's almost like, what do you do? Like Ben SImmons, all right, do you not sign him and then he just walks and then you're basically back to square one? Like, it's like, what? I feel like something needs to be done with the max money thing, that an average to good player is somehow forcing the hand of teams to give them max money.
And look, Paul George is another example. Look, this is a Kawhi Leonard move. Remember, Kawhi Leonard basically told the Clippers, you want me to sign with you? You got to trade for Paul George. How's that worked out? Now they're basically still they can actually win 2 games and get to an NBA Finals without Kawhi Leonard. But basically, I mean, we're all waiting for the other shoe to drop, because without Kawhi Leonard, you figure Phoenix is going to close the series out at one point.
What?
Paul George makes it a $1 trillion. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, these players, and they frustrate you in different ways. Yes, these teams have to be very careful about, when you're in a cap league and you have max contracts, you have to be very careful about who gets that money. Extremely careful, because if you tie it up in the wrong people, then you make a mistake. You're going to have a definite ceiling, and you're probably not going to win a title, and you probably wish you wouldn't have done that.
Mitch Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA Radio. Let me get your what role? How much does Ty Lue factor into all this? Like, what is the role that he is playing in the success of the Clippers? I have a friend hates Lue, thinks he's the worst coach in the league, and we back. So
with that, hey, have you talked to your friends since they have avoided elimination?
Still hates
They're
them.
Winning games without 2 key players, especially Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah,
he has made very good adjustments, Ty Lue. And I'll tell you what, there are people, when Ty Lue interviewed before he got the Clipper job, and he interviewed in Houston, there are people who were floored by how good people in that front office who were floored, because, Ty Lue's reputation was, he won a title because he coached LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. You got to give the guy a break. And he has proven in these playoffs that when you lose a player like Kawhi Leonard, he can still win games and advance. Remember, they won, 4 straight games against Utah, the last 2 without Kawhi Leonard. I mean, that's, if you're Utah, you got to have a big problem with that if you're the Utah owner, because your team bellied up and they didn't face Kawhi Leonard in the last 2 games. Conversely, if you're Steve Ballmer, you have to be thrilled to be in your first conference finals. Somehow your coach figured out a way through his rotations, how he used different players to win the last 4. They won 4 straight games, the last 2 without Kawhi Leonard. I think Ty Lue has done a sensational job. He really, and he's very open and honest with players. They listen to him. They respond to him. It's not just the product of, hey, he coached LeBron James. This guy's good. This guy's a good coach.
Mitch Lawrence, let me get your opinion then. The value of Ben Simmons in your mind is?
What does that mean? What do you mean the value? What?
Teams want him, don't want him. Can they get something for him?
He said his value's at the all-time low right now. You can't trade him right now. What do you think? You're going to Damian Lillard in the package? First of all,
I personally don't think so.
No. Look, listen. If you're Portland, you're not trading Damian Lillard. You want it to work with Chauncey Billups. And if you're Daryl Morey, yeah, you probably want to get rid of it. You're probably if you think you can't fix Ben Simmons, and I don't know if they've reached that conclusion or not. Doesn't sound like publicly they have, but you're going to trade him when he's at an all-time low. I mean, how much worse can it get for Ben Simmons?
Yeah. Oh, listen, I feel like everybody feels like he's got no value, and then it's this team likes him, and that team likes him, and this team might like him.
Pennies on the dollar. Now, I mean, there's something to be said for moving that contract because he's got 4 years, $150 million left or whatever.
Yep.
But boy, what are you going to get for him? What are you going to get for him? And I don't know. And I'll tell you what, I have not heard there are that many teams who are kicking down the door of Daryl Morey to go get him. Why do you want to bring in Ben Simmons now? Do you think that because
I would
change of scenery, he's going to all of a sudden become aggressive and shoot the ball?
No.
And become a proficient and become a guy who's a willing shooter? I'm not buying that.
No, I agree with you. But all right, so Minnesota, apparently they like him. All right, they want him badly. Do you like a Ben Simmons for D'Angelo Russell swap? Does that make you better or different?
You're talking about from the Sixers standpoint?
Yeah.
I'm not that big on D'Angelo Russell. I don't know. I mean,
me neither.
I'd wait it out.
Yeah,
I'd wait it out still.
CJ McCollum's another name we keep hearing.
Yeah, now that could be more reasonable. I mean, and CJ McCollum is, to me, he's kind of overrated in my book. He likes to say that it's, him and Damian Lillard. It's Damian Lillard 1 and he's number 2.
No question.
Can he be the Jimmy Butler guy? Perhaps. I'm not saying he definitely can be. He might be a better fit for that. But I don't, all this is all, conjecture, speculation. Minnesota really wants Ben Simmons? Really? They really want Ben Simmons. I have not heard that.
Is the Ben Simmons, is that is he like the biggest offseason conundrum? Like, is he going to, does anybody want him or not? Or because it's not a huge free agent class.
Well, the question is what's going to happen with Kawhi. I think he's going to stay with the Clippers no matter what, even though there's this rumor going around that he's dissatisfied with their medical staff, which is, I'm just so bored with Kawhi Leonard. It's ridiculous. He never plays. How can you be great if you don't play?
Yeah, that whole thing has turned out to be wild, this whole Kawhi Leonard out there story, that the fact that they get to the conference final for the first time ever and he's not even there.
He can't play. And then he sits up in the suite. He's not with the team on the bench. We know what he's done in the past. I don't know what he's going to do in the future. I really don't. I don't know if he can help you in the future. If he can't play in these playoff games, he's no help. He's a big question. Obviously, Miami wants to make some. You talk about off-season issues, problems. Yeah, Ben Simmons is among the top because that was the number 1 team in the East, and they couldn't even get to the conference finals. So yeah, it's a huge thing, and a lot of it's on him, and a lot of it was on Doc Rivers too. I mean, you blow 25 and 18-point leads. What does the NBA coach have to do? He has to stop the bleeding at some point, get his team settled, call the correct plays, get the ball in the right hands, the right people, get that momentum shifted back his way. Didn't do that.
Didn't get it done. Mitch Lawrence at Mitch_Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA Radio. Always enjoy talking a little hoops. Tonight you got the Bucks and you got, of course, the Hawks, and got Game 6 tomorrow night. Both of them right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Mitch. Always love it, man.
Thanks, Mike. Talk to you later.
Yeah, man. Hey, very matter-of-factly, what kind of value does Ben Simmons have? Not a whole heck of a lot. We'll see. We talked about this the other day. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We'll find out which teams value what Simmons brings, if any of them do at all. You might be stuck with him for this year, and maybe he comes back. And I personally do not see him expanding this game at all. I just don't. I don't. I value what he does. I value what he brings. But if they want him to with an expanded game, I don't see that that happens. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope so. The Phillies have decided to put Spencer Howard back on normal starters routine at AAA. He said he'll build up to 100 pitches. This is from Matt Gill from The Athletic. Said basically the Phillies are thinking about 2022 with him here. My gosh. Are they kidding me with that? Are they kidding? Who sat down and said, we have this asset that can help our team now? We have a miserable bullpen. This guy can help it now. And we don't know what to do with him, so we're going to try to get him to work towards throwing 100 pitches in a game. How about you scrap that idea in season? You say, help this team win now, because sadly, you're only 5 games out. If you got half-decent bullpen pitching, you're probably in the mix. And then in the offseason, you try to work on that with him. That's what you get. That's what you get when you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a plan. All right, when we come back, Mark Zumoff, the voice of the Sixers, no longer. He announced today that he is retiring from the job. My conversation with Mark Zumoff during the pandemic on how he got the job, his route to the 76ers play-by-play gig. We'll air that interview, conversation with Zoo next. All right, 527. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, now open Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. Earlier today, Mark Zumoff announced that he is hanging him up. He will no longer be the voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. They will need to find a new play-by-play voice. Now, back during the pandemic when there were no sports, we checked in with certain broadcasters and told them, asked them how they got to their current positions. One of those broadcasters was Mark Zumoff, and I think today would be apropos to share that conversation with Mark Zumoff. Our conversation with him, this was, again, back during the pandemic. So some of the references in there, if you hear that, it was because we were during the pandemic. There was nothing going on. We basically had Mark and others share their story of how they became the voices of these teams. So here's Mark Zumoff's story on the Sports Bash. All right, that was my conversation with Mark Zumoff back during the pandemic. A chance for you guys to kind of hear his road to which he retired today. Mark Zumoff retired as the play-by-play voice of the Philadelphia 76ers, and it was a privilege and honor to get to listen to him and then talk to him and find out his story. And we did that back, I guess it was April during the pandemic. Thanks to Mark Zumoff then, and thanks to Mark Zumoff for calling all the action all these years. It will be a very, very difficult person to replace. All right, we'll finish up the show here on the Sports Bash coming up next. All right, we'll get ready to wrap up the show tonight. Don't forget, game night's coming up. Brian O'Ringer, former scout in the NBA, will join Josh tonight at 6:20. He's always a very interesting listen. Josh Jennings, my producer, as we get ready to wrap up the show. Spencer Howard got demoted today. Gene Segura is activated. Frank Close said this.
For somebody that got hired in December, now I think a lot of people don't realize this, but you enter that offseason, you figure out your organizational approach for the offseason right afterwards. And the Phillies fired Matt Klentak, or he stepped down, or whatever you want to call it, and they had a set of path forward, and then he comes in like 2+ months later, right? So in a way, he's got to sit around and evaluate what he has. And I know that that's just maddening for the fan base, that you kind of have to wade through whatever you have this season. You might add a couple pieces that do no harm. Like I just said, you're not trading any prospects. You don't even have room to take on anybody's money, but you might want to try to find something to mix this up just a little bit.
All right. So with that being said about Dave Dombrowski, I don't think he's in a great spot here, but is he the right guy to fix this mess?
He's the only guy to fix this mess.
Wow.
Because at this point in time, you need a fresh set of eyes to come in this organization who has legitimate resume to fix this problem. And it's not going to be a clean fix. He's going to have to make some uncomfortable trades. And it's going to take a couple of years, but I think he can get it done, Mike. You just got to give him time.
That's interesting. I am not optimistic. I'm not saying he's not the right guy. Now, the whole parallel that Frank brought up about what he did in Detroit would be the positive part. The negative part is this team has no minor leagues for him to even trade off to try to improve the team. You know what I mean?
Sure. But on the flip side, you also have to admit that, Dombrowski, who else was going to come in here and fix this? You know what I mean? Who else could they have hired?
Well, I guess the question is, you look around baseball and the way the game is going. Like, is Joe Girardi, he won a World Series, right?
Yes.
He won a World Series.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's a buffoon?
Well, Dombrowski didn't hire him.
Well, I'm not, but my point is, I don't think the game is the same as when Dombrowski built these teams.
It's not the same, but it's also not that different. It's still baseball. You still need pitchers. You still need timely hitting.
Like my buddy Jimmy Traina over at Sports Illustrated, does the sports media podcast. He was tweeting up a storm today about how firing Boone does no good for the Yankees. He says it's completely useless. He's not the manager. The manager of the Yankees is Brian Cashman. His analytics. Cashman doesn't want a manager. He wants a robot who does what the computer says. That is the thought process of many teams now, is that the manager really doesn't do this, just the general manager. So that the manager can't manage a game that he wants the way he wants to. So I guess the question is, and we only have 10 seconds, so we'll have to talk more about this tomorrow, is Dombrowski doing the things that these other outside-the-box GMs are doing? Houston, Tampa Bay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, Brian O'Ringer with Josh tonight at 6:20. You're going to want to stick around for that. I'm back tomorrow. Coming up on Wednesday, we'll take a look at the Phillies and Marlins series. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City is here. The NBA playoffs, Jason Fitz from Spain and Fitz joins the show. Jeff Mosher, as we are one day closer to Eagles training camp, and more NFL with Jeff Kerr at 5:25.